The Complete Works of William Shakespeare by William Shakespeare. Act V. Scene I. Cecilia. A room in the palace of Leontes. Enter Leontes, Cleomenes, Dion, Paulina, and others. Cleomenes, sir, you have done enough, and have performed a saint-like sorrow. No fault could you make which you have not redeemed. Indeed, paid down more penitence than done trespass. At the last, do as the heavens have done, forget your evil. With them, forgive yourself. Leontes. Whilst I remember her and her virtues, I cannot forget my blemishes in them, and so still think of the wrong I did myself, which was so much that ereless it hath made my kingdom, and destroyed the sweet's companion that e'er man bred his hopes out of. Paulina. True, too true, my lord. If one by one you wedded all the world, or from the all that are took something good, to make a perfect woman, she you killed would be unparalleled. Leontes. I think so. Killed. She I killed. I did so, but thou strict'st me sorely. To say I did, it is as bitter upon thy tongue as in my thought. Now, good now, say so but seldom. Cleomenes, not at all, good lady. You might have spoken 1,000 things that would have done the time more benefit, and gracked your kindness better. Paulina. You are one of those would have him wed again. Dion. If you would not so, you pity not the state, nor the remembrance of his most sovereign name. Consider little what dangers, by his highness fail of issue, may drop upon his kingdom, and devour in certain lookers on. What were more holy than to rejoice the former queen as well? What holier than, for royalty's repair, for present comfort, and for future good, to bless the bed of majesty again with a sweet fellow to tea? Paulina. There is none worthy, respecting her that's gone. Besides, the gods will have fulfilled their secret purposes. For has not the divine Apollo said, is he not the tenor of his oracle, that King Leontes shall not have an heir till his lost child be found? Which that it shall, is all as monstrous to our human reason as my Antigonus to break his grave and come again to me, who, on my life, did perish with the infant. 'Tis your counsel my lord should to the heavens be contrary, oppose against their wills. To Leontes? Care not for issue, the crown will find an heir. Great Alexander left his to Th. Worthius, so his successor was like to be the best. Leontes. Good Paulina, who hast the memory of Hermione, I know, in honor, oh that ever I had squared me to thy counsel. Then, even now, I might have looked upon my queen's full eyes, have taken treasure from her lips, Paulina, and left them more rich for what they yielded. Leontes. Thou speakst truth. No more such wives. Therefore, no wife, one worse, and better us, would make her sainted spirit again possess her corpse, and on this stage, where we offenders now appear, so vexed, and begin. Why to me? Paulina. Had she such power, she had just cause. Leontes. She had, and would incense me to murder her I married. Paulina. I should so. Were I the ghost that walked, I'd bid you mark her eye, and tell me for what dull part into you chose her, then I'd shriek, that even your ears should rift to hear me, and the words that followed should be, remember mine. Leontes. Stars, stars, and all eyes else dead coals. Fear thou no wife, I'll have no wife, Paulina. Paulina. Will you swear never to marry but by my free leave? Leontes. Never, Paulina, so be blessed my spirit. Paulina. Then, good my lords, bear witness to his oath. Cleomenes, you tempt him overmuch. Paulina. Unless another, as like Hermione as is her picture, affront his eye. Cleomenes, good madam, Paulina. I have done. Yet if my lord will marry, if you will, sir, no remedy but you will, give me the office to choose you a queen, she shall not be so young as was your former, but she shall be such as, walked your first queen's ghost, it should take joy to see her in your arms. Leontes. My true Paulina, we shall not marry till thou bidst us. Paulina. That shall be when your first queen's again in breath, never till then. Enter a servant. Servant. One that gives out himself Prince Florizel, son of Polixenes, with his princess, she the fairest I have yet beheld, desires access to your high presence. Leontes. What with him? He comes not like to his father's greatness, his approach, so out of circumstance and sudden, tells us 'tis not a visitation framed, but forked by need and accident. What train? Servant. But few, and those but mean. Leontes. His princess, say you, with him? Servant. Aye, the most peerless piece of earth, I think, that e'er the sun shone bright on. Paulina. O Hermione, as every present time doth boast itself above a better gone, so must thy grave give way to what's seen now. Sir, you yourself have said and writ so, but your writing now is colder than that theme, she had not been, nor was not to be equalled, thus your verse flowed with her beauty once. 'Tis shrewdly ebbed, to say you have seen a better. Servant. Pardon, madam, the one I have almost forgot, your pardon, the other, warehouse. And she has obtained your eye, will have your tongue too. This is a creature, would she begin a sect, might quench the zeal of all professors else, make proselytes of who she but bid follow. Paulina. How? Not women? Servant. Women will love her that she is a woman more worth than any man, men, that she is the rarest of all women. Leontes. Go, Cleomenes, yourself, assisted with your honored friends, bring them to our embracement. Exeunt Cleomenes and others. Still, 'tis strange he thus should steal upon us. Paulina. Had our prince, jewel of children, seen this hour, he had paired well with this lord. There was not full a month between their births. Leontes. Prithee no more, cease. Thou know'st he dies to me again when talked of. Sure, when I shall see this gentleman, thy speeches will bring me to consider that which may unfurnish me of reason. They are come. Enter Florizel, Perdita, Cleomenes, and others. Your mother was most true to wedlock, prince, for she did print your royal father off, conceiving you. Were I but 21, your father's image is so hid in you, his very air, that I should call you brother, as I did him, and speak of something wildly by us performed before. Most dearly welcome. And your fair princess, goddess. Oh, alas! I lost the couple that twixt heaven and earth might thus have stood, begetting wonder, as you, gracious couple, do. And then I lost, all mine own folly, the society, amity too, of your brave father, whom, though bearing misery, I desire my life once more to look on him. Florizel. By his command have I here touched Cecilia, and from him give you all greetings that a king, at friend, can send his brother, and but infirmity, which waits upon worn times, hath something seized his wished ability. He had himself the lands and waters twixt your throne and his measured, to look upon you, whom he loves, he bade me say so, more than all the scepters and those that bear them living. Leontes. O my brother, good gentleman! The wrongs I have done thee stir afresh within me, and these thy offices, so rarely kind, are as interpreters of my behindhand slackness. Welcome hither, as is the spring to the earth. And hath he too exposed this paragon to the fearful usage, at least ungentle, of the dreadful Neptune, to greet a man not worth her pains, much less th adventure of her person? Florizel. Good, my lord, she came from Libya. Leontes. Where the warlike Smalus, that noble honored lord, is feared and loved? Florizel. Most royal sir, from thence, from him, whose daughter his tears proclaimed his, parting with her thence, a prosperous south wind friendly, we have crossed, to execute the charge my father gave me for visiting your highness. My best train I have from your Sicilian shores dismissed, who for Bohemia bend, to signify not only my success in Libya, sir, but my arrival, and my wife's, in safety here, where we are. Leontes. The blessed gods purge all infection from our air whilst you do climate here. You have a holy father, a graceful gentleman, against whose person, so sacred as it is, I have done sin, for which the heavens, taking angry note, have left me issueless. And your father's blessed, as he from heaven merits it, with you, worthy his goodness. What might I have been, might I a son and daughter now have looked on, such goodly things as you? Enter a lord. Lord. Most noble sir, that which I shall report will bear no credit, were not the proof so nigh. Please you, great sir, Bohemia greets you from himself by me, desires you to attach his son, who has his dignity and duty both cast off, fled from his father, from his hopes, and with a shepherd's daughter. Leontes. Where's Bohemia? Speak. Lord. Here in your city. I now came from him. I speak amazedly, and it becomes my marvel and my message. To your court whiles he was hastening in the chase, it seems, of this fair couple meets he on the way the father of this seeming lady and her brother, having both their country quitted with this young prince. Florizel. Camillo has betrayed me, whose honor and whose honesty till now endured all weathers. Lord. Lay Tiso to his charge. He's with the king your father. Leontes. Who? Camillo? Lord. Camillo, sir, I spake with him, who now has these poor men in question. Never saw I wretches so quake, they kneel, they kiss the earth, forswear themselves as often as they speak. Bohemia stops his ears, and threatens them with divers deaths in death. Perdita. O my poor father! The heaven sets spies upon us, will not have our contract celebrated. Leontes. You are married? Florizel. We are not, sir, nor are we like to be. The stars, I see, will kiss the valleys first. The odds for high and lows alike. Leontes. My lord, is this the daughter of a king? Florizel. She is, when once she is my wife. Leontes. That once, I see by your good father's speed, will come on very slowly. I am sorry, most sorry, you have broken from his liking, where you were tied in duty, and as sorry your choice is not so rich in worth as beauty, that you might well enjoy her. Florizel. Dear, look up, though fortune, visible an enemy, should chase us with my father, power no jot hath she to change our loves. Beseech you, sir, remember since you owed no more to time than I do now, with thought of such affections step forth mine advocate. At your request my father will grant precious things as trifles. Leontes. Would he do so, I'd beg your precious mistress, which he counts but a trifle. Paulina. Sir, my liege, your eye hath too much youth and tea, not a month 'fore your queen died, she was more worth such gazes than what you look on now. Leontes. I thought of her even in these looks I made. To Florizel. But your petition is yet unanswered. I will to your father. Your honor not o'erthrown by your desires, I am friend to them and you, upon which errand I now go toward him, therefore follow me, and mark what way I make. Come, good my lord. Exeunt. Scene 2. The same. Before the palace. Enter Autolycus and a gentleman. Autolycus. Beseech you, sir, were you present at this relation? First Gentleman. I was by at the opening of the fardel, heard the old shepherd deliver the manner how he found it, whereupon, after a little amazedness, we were all commanded out of the chamber. Only this, methought I heard the shepherd say he found the child. Autolycus. I would most gladly know the issue of it. First Gentleman. I make a broken delivery of the business, but the changes I perceived in the king and Camillo were very notes of admiration. They seemed almost, with staring on one another, to tear the cases of their eyes. There was speech in their dumbness, language in their very gesture. They looked as they had heard of a world ransomed, or one destroyed. A notable passion of wonder appeared in them, but the wisest beholder, that knew no more but seeing could not say if th importance were joy or sorrow, but in the extremity of the one, it must needs be. Here comes a gentleman that happily knows more. Enter a gentleman. The news, Rogero? Second gentleman. Nothing but bonfires. The oracle is fulfilled, the king's daughter is found. Such a deal of wonder is broken out within this hour that ballad makers cannot be able to express it. Here comes the Lady Paulina's steward. He can deliver you more. Enter a third gentleman. How goes it now, sir? This news, which is called true, is so like an old tale that the verity of it is in strong suspicion. Has the king found his heir? Third gentleman. Most true, if ever truth were pregnant by circumstance. That which you hear you'll swear you see, there is such unity in the proofs. The mantle of Queen Hermione's, her jewel about the neck of it, the letters of Antigonus found with it, which they knowed to be his character, the majesty of the creature in resemblance of the mother, the affection of nobleness which nature shows above her breeding, and many other evidences proclaim her with all certainty to be the king's daughter. Did you see the meeting of the two kings? Second gentleman. No. Third gentleman. Then you have lost a sight which was to be seen, cannot be spoken of. There might you have beheld one joy crown another, so and in such manner that it seemed sorrow wept to take leave of them, for their joy waited in tears. There was casting up of eyes, holding up of hands, with countenance of such distraction that they were to be known by garment, not by favor. Our king, being ready to leap out of himself for joy of his found daughter, as if that joy were now become a loss, cries, "Oh, thy mother, thy mother!" Then asks Bohemia forgiveness, then embraces his son-in-law, then again worries he his daughter with clipping her, now he thanks the old shepherd, which stands by like a weather-bitten conduit of many kings' reigns. I never heard of such another encounter, which lames report to follow it, and undoes description to do it. Second gentleman. What, pray you, became of Antigonus, that carried hence the child? Third gentleman. Like an old tale still, which will have matter to rehearse, though credit be asleep and not an ear open. He was torn to pieces with a bear, this avouches the shepherd's son, who has not only his innocence, which seems much, to justify him, but a handkerchief and rings of his that Paulina knows. First gentleman. What became of his bark and his followers? Third gentleman. Wrecked the same instant of their master's death, and in the view of the shepherd, so that all the instruments which aided to expose the child were even then lost when it was found. But oh, the noble combat that twixt joy and sorrow was fought in Paulina! She had one eye declined for the loss of her husband, another elevated that the oracle was fulfilled. She lifted the princess from the earth, and so locks her in embracing, as if she would pin her to her heart, that she might no more be in danger of losing. First gentleman. The dignity of this act was worth the audience of kings and princes, for by such was it acted. Third gentleman. One of the prettiest touches of all, and that which angled for mine eyes caught the water though not the fish, was, when at the relation of the queen's death, with the manner how she came to it bravely confessed and lamented by the king, how Attentivenes wounded his daughter, till, from one sign of dolour to another, she did, with an, alas, I would fain say, bleed tears, for I am sure my heart wept blood. Who was most marble there changed colour, some swooned, all sorrowed. If all the world could have seen it, the woe had been universal. First gentleman. Are they returned to the court? Third gentleman. No, the princess hearing of her mother's statue, which is in the keeping of Paulina, a piece many years in doing and now newly performed by that rare Italian master, Julio Romano, who, had he himself eternity, and could put breath into his work, would beguile nature of her custom, so perfectly he is her ape. He so near to Hermione hath done Hermione that they say one would speak to her and stand in hope of answer. Thither with all greediness of affection are they gone, and there they intend to sup. Second gentleman. I thought she had some great matter there in hand, for she hath privately twice or thrice a day, ever since the death of Hermione, visited that removed house. Shall we thither, and with our company piece the rejoicing? First gentleman. Who would be thence that has the benefit of access? Every wink of an eye some new grace will be born, Our absence makes us unthrifty to our knowledge. Let's along. Excellent gentlemen. Autolycus. Now, had I not the dash of my former life in me, would preferment drop on my head. I brought the old man and his son aboard the prince, told him I heard them talk of a fardel and I know not what. But he at that time overfond of the shepherd's daughter, so he then took her to be, who began to be much sea-sick, and himself little better, extremity of weather continuing, this mystery remained undiscovered. But 'tis all one to me, for had I been the finder out of this secret, it would not have relished among my other discredits. Enter shepherd and clown. Here come those I have done good to against my will, and already appearing in the blossoms of their fortune. Shepherd. Come, boy, I am past more children, but thy sons and daughters will be all gentlemen born. Clown. You are well met, sir. You denied to fight with me this other day, because I was no gentleman born. See you these clothes? Say you see them not and think me still no gentleman born, you would best say these robes are not gentleman born. Give me the lie do, and try whether I am not now a gentleman born. Autolycus. I know you are now, sir, a gentleman born. Clown. Aye, and have been so any time these 4 hours. Shepherd. And so have I, boy. Clown. So you have, but I was a gentleman born before my father, for the king's son took me by the hand and called me brother, and then the 2 kings called my father brother, and then the prince, my brother, and the princess, my sister, called my father father, and so we wept, and there was the first gentlemanlike tears that ever we shed. Shepherd. We may live, son, to shed many more. Clown. Aye, or else 'twere hard luck, being in so preposterous a state as we are. Autolycus. I humbly beseech you, sir, to pardon me all the faults I have committed to your worship, and to give me your good report to the prince my master. Shepherd. Prithee, son, do, for we must be gentle, now we are gentlemen. Clown. Thou wilt amend thy life? Autolycus. Aye, and it like your good worship. Clown. Give me thy hand, I will swear to the prince thou art as honest a true fellow as any is in Bohemia. Shepherd. You may say it, but not swear it. Clown. Not swear it, now I am a gentleman? Let boors and franklins say it, I'll swear it. Shepherd. How if it be false, son? Clown. If it be ne'er so false, a true gentleman may swear it in the behalf of his friend. And I'll swear to the prince thou art a tall fellow of thy hands and that thou wilt not be drunk. But I know thou art no tall fellow of thy hands and that thou wilt be drunk, but I'll swear it, and I would thou wouldst be a tall fellow of thy hands. Autolycus. I will prove so, sir, to my power. Clown. Aye, by any means prove a tall fellow. If I do not wonder how thou darest venture to be drunk, not being a tall fellow, trust me not. Hark! The kings and the princes, our kindred, are going to see the queen's picture. Come, follow us, we'll be thy good masters. Exeunt. Scene 3. The same. A room in Paulina's house. Enter Leontes, Polixenes, Florizel, Perdita, Camillo, Paulina, lords and attendants. Leontes. O grave and good Paulina, the great comfort that I have had of thee. Paulina. What, sovereign sir, I did not well, I meant well. All my services you have paid home, but that you have vouchsafed, with your crown brother, and these your contracted heirs of your kingdoms, my poor house to visit, it is a surplus of your grace which any ver my life may last to answer. Leontes. O Paulina, we honor you with trouble. But we came to see the statue of our queen, your gallery have we passed through, not without much content and many singularities. But we saw not that which my daughter came to look upon, the statue of her mother. Paulina. As she lived peerless, so her dead likeness, I do well believe, excels whatever yet you looked upon or hand of man hath done. Therefore I keep it lonely apart. But here it is, prepared to see the life as lively mocked as ever still sleep mocked death. Behold, and say 'tis well. Paulina undraws a curtain, and discovers Hermione standing as a statue. I like your silence, it the more shows off your wonder, but yet speak. First you, my liege. Comes it not something near? Leontes. Her natural posture. Chide me, dear stone, that I may say indeed thou art Hermione, or rather, thou art she and thy not chiding, for she was as tender as infancy and grace. But yet, Paulina, Hermione was not so much wrinkled, nothing so aged as this seems. Polixenes. Oh, not by much! Paulina. So much the more our carver's excellence, which lets go by some 16 years and makes her as she lived now. Leontes. As now she might have done, so much to my good comfort as it is now piercing to my soul. Oh, thus she stood, even with such life of majesty, warm life, as now it coldly stands, when first I wooed her. I am ashamed. Does not the stone rebuke me for being more stone than it? O royal peace, there's magic in thy majesty, which has my evils conjured to remembrance, and from thy admiring daughter took the spirits, standing like stone with thee. Perdita. And give me leave, and do not say 'tis superstition, that I kneel, and then implore her blessing. Lady, dear queen, that ended when I but began, give me that hand of yours to kiss. Paulina. Oh, patience! The statue is but newly fixed, the color's not dry. Camillo. My lord, your sorrow was too sore laid on, which 16 winters cannot blow away, so many summers dry. Scarce any joy did ever so long live, no sorrow but killed itself much sooner. Polixenes. Dear my brother, let him that was the cause of this have power to take off so much grief from you as he will peace up in himself. Paulina. Indeed, my lord, if I had thought the sight of my poor image would thus have wrought you, for the stone is mine, I'd not have showed it. Leontes. Do not draw the curtain. Paulina. No longer shall you gaze on't, lest your fancy may think anon it moves. Leontes. Let be, let be. Would I were dead, but that methinks already what was he that did make it. See, my lord, would you not deem it breath? And that those veins did verily bear blood? Polixenes. Masterly done, the very life seems warm upon her lip. Leontes. The fixture of her eye has motion in tea, as we are mocked with art. Paulina. I'll draw the curtain, my lord's almost so far transported that he'll think anon it lives. Leontes. O sweet Paulina, make me to think so 20 years together. No settled senses of the world can match the pleasure of that madness. Let tea alone. Paulina. I am sorry, sir, I have thus far stirred you, but I could afflict you further. Leontes. Do, Paulina, for this affliction has a taste as sweet as any cordial comfort. Still methinks there is an air comes from her. What fine chisel could ever yet cut breath? Let no man mock me, for I will kiss her. Paulina. Good my lord, forbear, the ruddiness upon her lip is wet, you'll mar it if you kiss it, stain your own with oily painting. Shall I draw the curtain? Leontes. No, not these 20 years. Perdita. So long could I stand by, a looker on. Paulina. Either forbear, quit presently the chapel, or resolve you for more amazement. If you can behold it, I'll make the statue move indeed, descend, and take you by the hand. But then you'll think, which I protest against, I am assisted by wicked powers. Leontes. What you can make her do I am content to look on, what to speak, I am content to hear, for 'tis as easy to make her speak as move. Paulina. It is required you do awake your faith. Then all stand still, or those that think it is unlawful business I am about, let them depart. Leontes. Proceed, no foot shall stir. Paulina. Music, awake her, strike. Music. 'Tis time, descend, be stone no more, approach, strike all that look upon with marvel. Come, I'll fill your grave up, stir, nay, come away. Bequeath to death your numbness, for from him dear life redeems you. You perceive she stirs. Hermione comes down from the pedestal. Start not, her actions shall be holy as you hear my spell is lawful. Do not shun her until you see her die again, for then you kill her double. Nay, present your hand, when she was young you wooed her, now in age is she become the suitor? Leontes. Embracing her. Oh, she's warm. If this be magic, let it be an art lawful as eating. Polixenes. She embraces him. Camillo. She hangs about his neck. If she pertain to life, let her speak too. Polixenes. Aye, and make it manifest. Where she has lived, or how stolen from the dead. Paulina. That she is living, were it but told you, should be hooted at like an old tale. But it appears she lives, though yet she speak not. Mark a little while. Please you to interpose, fair madam. Kneel and pray your mother's blessing. Turn, good lady, our Perdita is found. Presenting Perdita, who kneels to Hermione. Hermione. You gods, look down, and from your sacred vials pour your graces upon my daughter's head. Tell me, mine own, where hast thou been preserved? Where lived? How found thy father's court? For thou shalt hear that I, knowing by Paulina that the oracle gave hope thou wast in being, have preserved myself to see the issue. Paulina. There's time enough for that, lest they desire upon this push to trouble your joys with like relation. Go together, you precious winners all, your exultation partake to everyone. I, an old turtle, will wing me to some withered bough, and there my mate, that's never to be found again, lament till I am lost. Leontes. O peace, Paulina! Thou shouldst a husband take by my consent, as I by thine a wife. This is a match, and made between us by vows. Thou hast found mine, but how is to be questioned, for I saw her, as I thought, dead, and have in vain said many a prayer upon her grave. I'll not seek far for him, I partly know his mind to find thee an honorable husband. Come, Camillo, and take her by the hand, whose worth and honesty is richly noted, and here justified by us, a pair of kings. Let's from this place. What? Look upon my brother, both your pardons, that error I put between your holy looks my ill suspicion. This your son-in-law, and son unto the king, whom heaven's directing, is troth plight to your daughter. Good Paulina, lead us from hence, where we may leisurely each one demand, an answer to his part performed in this wide gap of time, since first we were dissevered. Hastily lead away. Exeunt. A lover's complaint from off a hill whose concave womb reworded a plaintful story from a sistering vale, my spirits to attend this double voice accorded, and down I laid to list the sad toned tale. Ere long espied a fickle maid full pale, tearing of papers, breaking rings eight-wing, storming her world with sorrow's wind and rain. Upon her head a plaited hive of straw, which fortified her visage from the sun, whereon the thought might think sometime it saw the carcass of a beauty spent and done. Time had not scythed all that youth begun, nor youth all quit, but spite of heaven's fell rage some beauty peeped through lattice of seared age. Oft did she heave her napkin to her eyne, which on it had conceited characters, laundering the silken figures in the brine that seasoned woe had pelleted in tears, and often reading what contents it bears, as often shrieking undistinguished woe, in clamours of all size, both high and low. Sometimes her levelled eyes their carriage ride, as they did battery to the spheres intend, sometime diverted their poor balls are tied to th orbed earth, sometimes they do extend their view right on, anon their gazes lend to every place at once, and nowhere fixed, the mind and sight distractedly commixed. Her hair, nor loose nor tied in formal plait, proclaimed in her a careless hand of pride, for some untucked descended her sheaved hat, hanging her pale and pine cheek beside, some in her threatened fillet still did bide, and true to bondage, would not break from thence, though slackly braided in loose negligence. 1,000 favors from Ammon she drew, of amber, crystal, and of beaded jet, which one by one she in a river threw, upon whose weeping margent she was set, like usury applying wet to wet, or monarch's hands, that lets not bounty fall where one cries some, but where excess begs all. Of folded schedules had she many a one, which she perused, sight, tore and gave the flood, cracked many a ring of posied gold and bone, bidding them find their sepulchres in mud, found yet mo letters sadly penned in blood, with slided silk, feet and affectedly enswathed, and sealed to curious secrecy. These often bathed she in her flux of eyes, and often kissed, and often gave to tear, cried, O false blood, thou register of lies, what unapproved witness dost thou bear? Ink would have seemed more black and damned here. This said, in top of rage the lines she rents, big discontent so breaking their contents. A reverend man that grazed his cattle nigh, sometime a blusterer, that the ruffle knew of court, of city, and had let go by the swiftest hours observed as they flew, towards this afflicted fancy fastly drew, and privileged by age, desires to know in brief the grounds and motives of her woe. So slides he down upon his grain bat, and comely distant sits he by her side, when he again desires her, being sat, her grievance with his hearing to divide, if that from him there may be aught applied which may her suffering ecstasy assuage, 'tis promised in the charity of age. Father, she says, though in me you behold the injury of many a blasting hour, let it not tell your judgment I am old, not age, but sorrow over me hath power. I might as yet have been a spreading flower, fresh to myself, if I had self-applied love to myself, and to no love beside. But woe is me! Too early I attended a youthful suit, it was to gain my grace. O one by nature's outward so commended, that maiden's eyes stuck over all his face, love lacked a dwelling and made him her place. And when in his fair parts she did abide, she was new lodged and newly deified. His browny locks did hang in crooked curls, and every light occasion of the wind upon his lips their silken parcels hurls. What's sweet to do will aptly find, each eye that saw him did enchant the mind, for on his visage was in little drawn, what largeness thinks in paradise was sawn. Small show of man was yet upon his chin, his phoenix down began but to appear, like unshorn velvet, on that termless skin, whose bare outbragged the web it seemed to wear. Yet showed his visage by that cost more dear, and nice affections wavering stood in doubt if best were as it was, or best without. His qualities were beauteous as his form, for maiden-tongued he was, and thereof free, yet if men envied him, was he such a storm as oft 'twixt May and April is to see, when winds breathe sweet, unruly though they be. His rudeness so with his authorized youth did livery falseness in a pride of truth. Well could he ride, and often men would say that horse his mettle from his rider takes, proud of subjection, noble by the sway, what rounds, what bounds, what course, what stop he makes. And controversy hence a question takes, whether the horse by him became his deed, or he his managed by well-doing steed. But quickly on this side the verdict went, his real habitude gave life and grace to appertainings and to ornament, accomplished in himself, not in his case. All aids, themselves made fairer by their place, came for additions, yet their purpose trim piqued not his grace, but were all gracked by him. So on the tip of his subduing tongue all kind of arguments and question deep, all replication prompt, and reason strong, for his advantage still did wake and sleep, to make the weeper laugh, the laugher weep. He had the dialect and different skill, catching all passions in his craft of will. That he did in the general bosom reign of young, of old, and sexes both enchanted, to dwell with him in thoughts, or to remain in personal duty, following where he haunted, consents bewitched, ere he desire, have granted, and dialogued for him what he would say, asked their own wills, and made their wills obey. Many there were that did his picture get to serve their eyes, and in it put their mind, like fools that in imagination set the goodly objects which abroad they find of lands and mansions, theirs in thought assigned, and labouring in low pleasures to bestow them, than the true gouty landlord which doth owe them. So many have, that never touched his hand, sweetly suppository them mistress of his heart. My woeful self that did in freedom stand, and was my own fee simple, not in part, what with his art in youth, and youth in art, through my affections in his charmed power, reserved the stalk and gave him all my flower. Yet did I not, as some my equals did, demand of him, nor being desired yielded, finding myself in honor so forbid, with safest distance I mine honor shielded. Experience for me many bulwarks builded of proofs new bleeding, which remained the foil of this false jewel, and his amorous spoil. But who ever shunned by precedent the destined ill she must herself essay, or forced examples gainst her own content, to put the bypassed perils in her way. Counsel may stop a while what will not stay, for when we rage, advice is often seen by blunting us to make our wills more keen. Nor gives it satisfaction to our blood, that we must curb it upon others' proof, to be forbode the sweets that seem so good, for fear of harms that preach in our behoof. O appetite, from judgment stand aloof. The one a palate hath that needs will taste, though reason weep and cry. It is thy last. For further I could say, this man's untrue, and knew the patterns of his foul beguiling, heard where his plants in others' orchards grew, saw how deceits were gilded in his smiling, knew vows were ever brokers to defiling, thought characters and words merely but art, and bastards of his foul adulterate heart. And long upon these terms I held my city, till thus he gone besiege me. Gentle maid, have of my suffering use some feeling pity, and be not of my holy vows afraid, that's to ye sworn, to none was ever said, for feasts of love I have been called unto, till now did ne'er invite, nor never woo. All my offences that abroad you see are errors of the blood, none of the mind, love made them not, with acture they may be, where either party is nor true nor kind, they sought their shame that so there. Shame did find, and so much less of shame in me remains, by how much of me their reproach contains. Among the many that mine eyes have seen, not one whose flame my heart so much as warmed, or my affection put to smallest teen, or any of my leisures ever charmed. Harm have I done to them, but ne'er was harmed, kept hearts in liveries, but mine own was free, and reigned commanding in his monarchy. Look here what tributes wounded fancy sent me, of pallid pearls and rubies red as blood, figuring that they their passions likewise lent me of grief and blushes, aptly understood in bloodless white and the encrimsoned mood, effects of terror and dear modesty, encamped in hearts, but fighting outwardly. And lo! Behold these talents of their hair, with twisted metal amorously impleached, I have received from many a several fair, their kind acceptance weepingly beseeched, with annex scions of fair gems enriched, and deep-brained sonnets that did amplify each stone's dear nature, worth, and quality. The diamond, white was beautiful and hard, whereto his invis properties did tend, the deep green emerald, in whose fresh regard weak sights their sickly radiance do amend, the heaven-hued sapphire and the opal blend with objects manifold, each several stone, with wit well blazoned smilled, or made some moan. Lo, all these trophies of affections hot, of pensive and subdued desires the tender, nature hath charged me that I hoard them not, but yield them up where I myself must render, that is, to you, my origin and ender, for these of force must your oblations be, since I their altar, you empatron me. O then advance of yours that phraseless hand, whose white weighs down the airy scale of praise, take all these similes to your own command, hallowed with sighs that burning lungs did raise, what me, your minister for you, obeys, works under you, and to your audit comes their distract parcels and combined sums. Lo, this device was sent me from a nun, or sister sanctified of holiest note, which late her noble suit in court did shun, whose rarest havings made the blossoms dote, for she was sought by spirits of richest coat, but kept cold distance, and did thence remove to spend her living in eternal love. But oh, my sweet, what labor is to leave the thing we have not, mastering what not strives, planing the place which did no form receive, playing patient sports and unconstrained jives, she that her fame so to herself contrives, the scars of battle scaped by the flight, and makes her absence valiant, not her might. Oh, pardon me, in that my boast is true, the accident which brought me to her eye, upon the moment did her force subdue, and now she would the caged cloister fly. Religious love put out religion's eye, not to be tempted would she be immured, and now to tempt all, liberty procured. How mighty then you are, oh hear me tell! The broken bosoms that to me belong have emptied all their fountains in my well, and mine I pour your ocean all among, I strong o'er them, and you o'er me being strong, must for your victory us all congest, as compound love to physic your cold breast. My parts had power to charm a sacred nun, who, disciplined and dieted in grace, believed her eyes when they assail begun, all vows and consecrations giving place. O most potential love! Vow, bond, nor space, in thee hath neither sting, knot, nor confine, for thou art all and all things else are thine. When thou impressest, what are precepts worth of stale example? When thou wilt inflame, how coldly those impediments stand forth, of wealth, of filial fear, law, kindred, fame. Love's arms are peace, gains rule, gains sense, gains shame, and sweetens, in the suffering pangs it bears, the aloes of all forces, shocks and fears. Now all these hearts that do on mine depend, feeling it break, with bleeding groans they pine, and supplicant their sighs to your extend, to leave the battery that you make gains mine, lending soft audience to my sweet design, and credence soul to that strong bonded oath, that shall prefer and undertake my troth. This said, his watery eyes he did dismount, whose sights till then were levelled on my face, each cheek a river running from a fount with brinish current downward flowed apace. Oh, how the channel to the stream gave grace! Who glozed with crystal gate the glowing roses that flame through water which their hue encloses. O Father, what a hell of witchcraft lies in the small orb of one particular tear! But with the inundation of the eyes what rocky heart to water will not wear? What breast so cold that is not warmed here? O cleft effect! Cold modesty, hot wrath, both fire from hence and chill extincture hath. For lo, his passion, but an art of craft, even there resolved my reason into tears, there my white stole of chastity I daft, shook off my sober guards, and civil fears, appeared to him as he to me appears, all melting, though our drops this difference bore, his poison me, and mine did him restore. In him a plenitude of subtle matter, applied to caudals, all strange forms receives, of burning blushes, or of weeping water, or swooning paleness, and he takes and leaves, in this aptness, as it best deceives, to blush at speeches rank, to weep at woes, or to turn white and swoon at tragic shows. That not a heart which in his level came could scape the hail of his all-hurting aim, showing fair nature is both kind and tame, and veiled in them, did win whom he would maim. Against the thing he sought he would exclaim, when he most burned in heart-wished luxury, he preached pure maid, and praised cold chastity. Thus merely with the garment of a grace, the naked and concealed fiend he covered, that inexperient gave the tempter place, which, like a cherubin, above them hovered. Who, young and simple, would not be so lovered? Me. I fell, and yet do question make what I should do again for such a sake. Oh, that infected moisture of his eye, oh, that false fire which in his cheeks so glowed. Oh, that forked thunder from his heart did fly, oh, that sad breath his spongy lungs bestowed, oh, all that borrowed motion, seeming ode, would yet again betray the forebetrayed, and new pervert a reconciled maid. The passionate pilgrim I. Did not the heavenly rhetoric of thine eye, gainst whom the world could not hold argument, persuade my heart to this false perjury? Vows for thee broke deserve not punishment. A woman I forswore, but I will prove, thou being a goddess, I forswore not thee, my vow was earthly, thou a heavenly love, thy grace being gained cures all disgrace in me. My vow is breath, and breath a vapor is, then, thou fair sun, that on this earth dost shine, exhale this vapor vow, in thee it is, if broken then it is no fault of mine. If by me broke, what fool is not so wise to break an oath, to win a paradise? 2. Sweet Cytherea, sitting by a brook with young Adonis, lovely, fresh, and green, did court the lad with many a lovely look, such looks as none could look but beauty's queen. She told him stories to delight his ear, she showed him favors to allure his eye, to win his heart she touched him here and there, touches so soft still conquer chastity. But whether unripe years did want conceit, or he refused to take her figured proffer, the tender nibbler would not touch the bait, but smile and jest at every gentle offer. Then fell she on her back, fair queen, and toward he rose and ran away. Ah, fool too froward! 3. If love make me forsworn, how shall I swear to love? Oh, never faith could hold, if not to beauty vowed, though to myself forsworn, to thee I'll constant prove, those thoughts, to me like oaks, to thee like osiers bowed. Study his bias leaves, and makes his book thine eyes, where all those pleasures live that art can comprehend. If knowledge be the mark, to know thee shall suffice. Well learned is that tongue that well can thee commend, all ignorant that soul that sees thee without wonder, which is to me some praise, that I thy parts admire. Thy eye Jove's lightning seems, thy voice his dreadful thunder, which, not to anger bent, is music and sweet fire. Celestial as thou art, oh do not love that wrong, to sing heaven's praise with such an earthly tongue. 4. Scarce had the sun dried up the dewy morn, and scarce the herd gone to the hedge for shade, when Cytherea, all in love forlorn, a longing tarriance for Adonis made, under an osier growing by a brook where Adon used to cool his spleen. Hot was the day, she hotter that did look for his approach, that often there had been. Anon he comes, and throws his mantle by, and stood stark naked on the brook's green brim. The sun looked on the world with glorious eye, yet not so wistly as this queen on him. He, spying her, bounced in, whereas he stood. O Jove, quoth she, why was not I a flood? V. Fair is my love, but not so fair as fickle, mild as a dove, but neither true nor trusty, brighter than glass, and yet, as glass is brittle, softer than wax, and yet, as iron, rusty, a lily pale, with damask dye to grace her, none fairer, nor none falser to deface her. Her lips to mine how often has she joined, between each kiss her oaths of true love swearing. How many tales to please me has she coined, dreading my love, the loss thereof still fearing. Yet in the midst of all her pure protestings, her faith, her oaths, her tears, and all were jestings. She burned with love, as straw with fire flammeth, she burned out love, as soon as straw outburneth. She framed the love, and yet she foiled the framing, she bade love last, and yet she fell a-turning. Was this a lover, or a lecher whether? Bad in the best, though excellent in neither. 6. If music and sweet poetry agree, as they must needs, the sister and the brother, then must the love be great twixt thee and me, because thou lovest the one, and I the other. Dowland to thee is dear, whose heavenly touch upon the lute doth ravish human sense, Spenser to me, whose deep con. And thou treble-dated crow, that thy sable gender makes with the breath thou giv'st intaxed, mongst our mourners shalt thou go. Here the anthem doth commence, love and constancy is dead, Phoenix and the turtle fled in a mutual flame from hence. So they loved, as love in twain had the essence but in one, two distincts, division none, number there in love was slain. Hearts remote, yet not asunder, distance and no space was seen twixt this turtle and his queen, but in them it were a wonder. So between them love did shine, that the turtle saw his right flaming in the phoenix sight, either was the other's mine. Property was thus appalled, that the self was not the same, single nature's double name either two nor one was called. Reason, in itself confounded, saw division grow together, to themselves yet either simple were so well compounded, that it cried, how true a twain seemeth this concordant one. Love hath reason, reason none, if what parts can so remain. Whereupon it made this threen to the phoenix and the dove, co-supremes and stars of love, as chorus to their tragic scene. Three knows beauty, truth, and rarity, grace in all simplicity, here enclosed in cinders lie. Death is now the phoenix nest, and the turtle's loyal breast to eternity doth rest. Leaving no posterity, 'twas not their infirmity, it was merry chastity. Truth may seem, but cannot be, beauty brag, but 'tis not she, truth and beauty buried be. To this urn let those repair that are either true or fair, for these dead birds sigh a prayer. The rape of Lucrece to the Right Honourable Henry Wriothesley, Earl of Southampton, and Baron of Titchfield. The love I dedicate to your lordship is without end, whereof this pamphlet, without beginning, is but a superfluous moiety. The warrant I have of your honourable disposition, not the worth of my untutored lines, makes it assured of acceptance. What I have done is yours, what I have to do is yours, being part in all I have devoted yours. Were my worth greater, my duty would show greater. Meantime, as it is bound to your lordship, to whom I wish long life, still lengthened with all happiness. Your lordship's in all duty, William Shakespeare. The argument. Lucius Tarquinius, for his excessive pride surnamed Superbus, after he had caused his own father-in-law, Servius Tullius, to be cruelly murdered, and contrary to the Roman laws and customs, not requiring or staying for the people's suffrages, had possessed himself of the kingdom, went, accompanied with his sons and other noblemen of Rome, to besiege Ardea. During which siege the principal men of the army meeting one evening at the tent of Sextus Tarquinius, the king's son, in their discourses after supper, every one commended the virtues of his own wife, among whom Collatinus extolled the incomparable chastity of his wife Lucretia. In that pleasant humor they all posted to Rome, and intending, by their secret and sudden arrival, to make trial of that which every one had before avouched, only Collatinus finds his wife, though it were late in the night, spinning amongst her maids. The other ladies were all found dancing and revelling, or in several disports. Whereupon the nobleman yielded Collatinus the victory, and his wife the fame. At that time Sextus Tarquinius, being inflamed with Lucrece's beauty, yet smothering his passions for the present, departed with the rest back to the camp, from whence he shortly after privily withdrew himself, and was, according to his estate, royally entertained and lodged by Lucrece at Collatium. The same night he treacherously stealeth into her chamber, violently ravished her, and early in the morning speedeth away. Lucrece, in this lamentable plight, hastily dispatched messengers, one to Rome for her father, another to the camp for Collatine. They came, the one accompanied with Junius Brutus, the other with Publius Valerius, and finding Lucrece attired in mourning habit, demanded the cause of her sorrow. She, first taking an oath of them for her revenge, revealed the actor, and whole manner of his dealing, and withal suddenly stabbed herself. Which done, with one consent they all vowed to root out the whole hated family of the Tarquins, and bearing the dead body to Rome, Brutus acquainted the people with the doer and manner of the vile deed, with a bitter invective against the tyranny of the king, wherewith the people were so moved, that with one consent and a general acclamation the Tarquins were all exiled, and the state government changed from kings to consuls. From the besieged Ardea all in post, borne by the trustless wings of false desire, lust-breathed Tarquin leaves the Roman host, and to Collatium bears the lightless fire which, in pale embers hid, lurks to aspire and girdle with embracing flames the waist of Collatine's fair love, Lucrece the chaste. Haply that name of chaste unhappily set this baitless edge on his keen appetite, when Collatine unwisely did not let to praise the clear unmatched red and white which triumphed in that sky of his delight, where mortal stars, as bright as heaven's beauties, with pure aspects did him peculiar duties. For he the night before, in Tarquin's tent, unlocked the treasure of his happy state, what priceless wealth the heavens had him lent in the possession of his beauteous mate, reckoning his fortune at such high proud rate, that kings might be espoused to more fame, but king nor peer to such a peerless dame. O happiness enjoyed but of a few! And if possessed, as soon decayed and done as is the morning's silver melting dew against the golden splendor of the sun. An expired date, cancelled ere well begun, honor and beauty, in the owner's arms, our weakly fortress from a world of harms. Beauty itself doth of itself persuade the eyes of men without an orator. What needeth then apologies be made, to set forth that which is so singular? Or why is Collatine the publisher of that rich jewel he should keep unknown from thievish ears, because it is his own? Perchance his boast of Lucrece' sovereignty suggested this proud issue of a king, for by our ears our hearts oft tainted be. Perchance that envy of so rich a thing, braving compare, disdainfully did sting his high-pitched thoughts, that meaner men should vaunt that golden hap which their superiors want. But some untimely thought did instigate his all too timeless speed, if none of those, his honor, his affairs, his friends, his state, neglected all, with swift intent he goes to quench the coal which in his liver glows. O rash false heat, wrapped in repentant cold, thy hasty spring still blasts, and ne'er grows old. When at Collatium this false lord arrived, well was he welcomed by the Roman dame, within whose face beauty and virtue strived which of them both should under proper fame. When virtue bragged, beauty would blush for shame. When beauty boasted blushes, in despite virtue would stain that or with silver white. But beauty, in that white intituled, from Venus' doves doth challenge that fair field. Then virtue claims from beauty beauty's red, which virtue gave the golden age, to gild their silver cheeks, and called it then their shield, teaching them thus to use it in the fight, when shame assailed, the red should fence the white. This heraldry in Lucrece's face was seen, argued by beauty's red, and virtue's white, of either's color was the other queen, proving from world's minority their right, yet their ambition makes them still to fight, the sovereignty of either being so great, that oft they interchange each other's seat. Their silent war of lilies and of roses, which Tarquin viewed in her fair face's field, and their pure ranks his traitor eye encloses, where, lest between them both it should be killed, the coward captive vanquished doth yield to those two armies that would let him go, rather than triumph in so false a foe. Now thinks he that her husband's shallow tongue, the niggard prodigal that praised her so, in that high task hath done her beauty wrong, which far exceeds his barren skill to show. Therefore that praise which Collatine doth owe enchanted Tarquin answers with surmise, in silent wonder of still gazing eyes. This earthly saint, adored by this devil, little suspecteth the false worshipper, for unstained thoughts do seldom dream on evil. Birds never limn no secret bushes fear, so guiltless she securely gives good cheer and reverend welcome to her princely guest, whose inward ill no outward harm expressed, for that he colored with his high estate, hiding base sin in plates of majesty, that nothing in him seemed inordinate, save sometime too much wonder of his eye, which, having all could not satisfy, but poorly rich, so wanteth in his store, that, cloyed with much, he pinneth still for more. But she, that never copped with stranger eyes, could pick no meaning from their parling looks, nor read the subtle shining secrecies writ in the glassy margins of such books. She touched no unknown baits, nor feared no hooks, nor could she moralize his wanton sight, more than his eyes were open to the light. He stories to her ears her husband's fame, won in the fields of fruitful Italy, and decks with praises Collatine's high name, made glorious by his manly chivalry with bruised arms and wreaths of victory. Her joy with heaved-up hand she doth express, and wordless, so greets heaven for his success. Far from the purpose of his coming hither, he makes excuses for his being there. No cloudy show of stormy blustering weather doth yet in his fair welkin once appear, till sable night, mother of dread and fear, upon the world dim darkness doth display, and in her vaulty prison stows the day. For then is Tarquin brought unto his bed, intending weariness with heavy sprite, for, after supper, long he questioned with modest Lucrece, and wore out the night, now leaden slumber with life's strength doth fight, and every one to rest themselves betake, save thieves, and cares, and troubled minds that wake. As one of which doth Tarquin lie revolving the sundry dangers of his will's obtaining, yet ever to obtain his will resolving, though weak-built hopes persuade him to abstaining. Despair to gain doth traffic oft for gaining, and when great treasure is the meed propoed, though death be adjunct, there's no death suppositoried. Those that much covet are with gains so fond, for what they have not, that which they possess they scatter and unloose it from their bond, and so, by hoping more, they have but less, or, gaining more, the profit of excess is but to surfeit, and such griefs sustain, that they prove bankrupt in this poor rich gain. The aim of all is but to nurse the life with honor, wealth, and ease, in waning age, and in this aim there is such thwarting strife, that one for all, or all for one we gauge, as life for honor in fell battles rage, honor for wealth, and oft that wealth doth cost the death of all, and all together lost. So that in venturing ill we leave to be the things we are, for that which we expect, and this ambitious foul infirmity, in having much, torments us with defect of that we have, so then we do neglect the thing we have, and, all for want of wit, make something nothing, by augmenting it. Such hazard now must doting Tarquin make, pawning his honor to obtain his lust, and for himself he must forsake. Then where is truth, if there be no self-trust? When shall he think to find a stranger just? When he himself confounds, betrays to slanderous tongues and wretched hateful days. Now stole upon the time the dead of night, when heavy sleep had closed up mortal eyes. No comfortable star did lend his light, no noise but owls' and wolves' death-boding cries. Now serves the season that they may surprise the silly lambs. Pure thoughts are dead and still, while lust and murder wake to stain and kill. And now this lustful lord leaped from his bed, throwing his mantle rudely o'er his arm, is madly tossed between desire and dread. One sweetly flatters, other feareth harm. But honest fear, bewitched with lust's foul charm, doth too oft betake him to retire, beaten away by brain-sick rude desire. His falchion on a flint he softly smitteth, that from the cold stones sparks of fire do fly, whereat a waxen torch forthwith he lighteth, which must be lodestar to his lustful eye, and to the flame thus speaks advisedly, as from this cold flint I enforce this fire, so Lucrece must I force to my desire. Here pale with fear he doth premeditate the dangers of his loathsome enterprise, and in his inward mind he doth debate what following sorrow may on this arise. Then looking scornfully, he doth despise his naked armor of still slaughtered lust, and justly thus controls his thoughts unjust. Fair torch, burn out thy light, and lend it not to darken her whose light excelleth thine. And die, unhallowed thoughts, before you blot with your uncleanness that which is divine. Offer pure incense to so pure a shrine. Let fair humanity abhor the deed that spots and stains love's modest snow-white weed. O shame to knighthood and to shining arms! O foul dishonor to my household's grave! O impious act, including all foul harms! A martial man to be soft fancy's slave! True valor still a true respect should have. Then my digression is so vile, so base, that it will live engraven in my face. Yea, though I die, the scandal will survive, and be an eyesore in my golden coat. Some loathsome dash the herald will contrive, to cipher me how fondly I did dote, that my posterity, shammed with the note, shall curse my bones, and hold it for no sin to wish that I their father had not been. What win I, if I gain the thing I seek? A dream, a breath, a froth of fleeting joy. Who buys a minute's mirth to wail a week? Or sells eternity to get a toy? For one sweet grape who will the vine destroy? Or what fond beggar, but to touch the crown, would with the scepter straight be strucken down? If Collatinus dream of my intent, will he not wake, and in a desperate rage post hither, this vile purpose to prevent? This siege that hath engirt his marriage, this blur to youth, this sorrow to the sage, this dying virtue, this surviving shame, whose crime will bear an ever-during blame. Oh, what excuse can my invention make when thou shalt charge me with so black a deed? Will not my tongue be mute, my frail joints shake? Mine eyes forego their light, my false heart bleed? The guilt being great, the fear doth still exceed, and extreme fear can neither fight nor fly, but coward-like, with trembling terror die. Had Collatinus killed my son or sire, or lain in ambush to betray my life, or were he not my dear friend, This desire might have excuse to work upon his wife, as in revenge or quit all of such strife. But as he is my kinsman, my dear friend, the shame and fault finds no excuse nor end. Shameful it is, aye, if the fact be known, hateful. It is, there is no hate in loving, I'll beg her love, but she is not her own. The worst is but denial and reproving, my will is strong, past reason's weak removing. Who fears a sentence, or an old man's saw shall by a painted cloth be kept in awe. Thus, graceless, holds he disputation 'tween frozen conscience and hot burning will, and with good thoughts makes dispensation, urging the worser sense for vantage still, which in a moment doth confound and kill all pure effects, and doth so far proceed, that what is vile shows like a virtuous deed. Quoth he, she took me kindly by the hand, and gazed for tidings in my eager eyes, fearing some hard news from the warlike band, where her beloved Collatinus lies. Oh, how her fear did make her colour rise! First red as roses that on lawn we lay, then white as lawn, the roses took away. And how her hand, in my hand being locked, forked it to tremble with her loyal fear, which struck her sad, and then it faster rocked, until her husband's welfare she did hear, whereat she smiled with so sweet a cheer, that had Narcissus seen her as she stood, self-love had never drowned him in the flood. Why hunt I then for colour or excuses? All orators are dumb when beauty pleadeth. Poor wretches have remorse in poor abuses. Love thrives not in the heart that shadows dreadeth. Affection is my captain, and he leadeth. And when his gaudy banner is displayed, the coward fights and will not be dismayed. Then, childish fear, avaunt! Debating, die! Respect and reason wait on wrinkled age. My heart shall never countermand mine eye. Sad pause and deep regard beseem the sage. My part is youth, and beats these from the stage. Desire my pilot is, beauty my prize. Then who fears sinking where such treasure lies? As corn o'ergrown by weeds, so heedful fear is almost chocked by unresisted lust. Away he steals with opening, listening ear, full of foul hope, and full of fond mistrust, both which, as servitors to the unjust, so cross him with their opposite persuasion, that now he vows a league, and now invasion. Within his thought her heavenly image sits, and in the selfsame seat sits Collatine. That eye which looks on her confounds his wits, that eye which him beholds, as more divine, unto a view so false will not incline, but with a pure appeal seeks to the heart, which once corrupted takes the worser part, and therein heartens up his servile powers, who, flattered by their leaders' jocund show, stuff up his lust, as minutes fill up hours. And as their captain, so their pride doth grow, paying more slavish tribute than they owe. By reprobate desire thus madly led, the Roman lord marcheth to Lucre's bed. The locks between her chamber and his will, each one by him enforked retires his ward. But, as they open they all rate his ill, which drives the creeping thief to some regard. The threshold grates the door to have him heard. Night-wandering weasels shriek to see him there. They fright him, yet he still pursues his fear. As each unwilling portal yields him way, through little vents and crannies of the place the wind wars with his torch, to make him stay, and blows the smoke of it into his face, extinguishing his conduct in this case. But his hot heart, which fond desire doth scorch, puffs forth another wind that fires the torch. And being lighted, by the light he spies Lucretia's glove, wherein her needle sticks, he takes it from the rushes where it lies, and griping it, the needle his finger pricks, as who should say this glove to wanton tricks is not a nerd, return again in haste, thou seest our mistress' ornaments are chaste. But all these poor forbiddings could not stay him, he in the worst sense construes their denial, the doors, the wind, the glove that did delay him, he takes for accidental things of trial, or as those bars which stop the hourly dial, who with a lingering stay his course doth let, till every minute pays the hour his debt. So, quoth he, these lets attend the time, like little frosts that sometime threat the spring, to add a more rejoicing to the prime, and give the sneaped birds more cause to sing. Pain pays the income of each precious thing. huge rocks, high winds, strong pirates, shelves and sands, the merchant fears, ere rich at home he lands. Now is he come unto the chamber door, that shuts him from the heaven of his thought, which with a yielding latch, and with no more, hath barred him from the blessed thing he sought. So from himself impiety hath wrought, that for his prey to pray he doth begin, as if the heavens should countenance his sin. But in the midst of his unfruitful prayer, having solicited the eternal power, that his foul thoughts might compass his fair fare, and they would stand auspicious to the hour, even there he starts, quoth he, I must deflower. The powers to whom I pray abhor this fact, how can they then assist me in the act? Then love and fortune be my gods, my guide. My will is backed with resolution, thoughts are but dreams till there. Affects be tried, the blackest sin is cleared with absolution, against love's fire fear's frost hath dissolution. The eye of heaven is out, and misty night covers the shame that follows sweet delight. This said, his guilty hand plucked up the latch, and with his knee the door he opens wide. The dove sleeps fast that this night owl will catch. Thus treason works ere traitors be espied. Who sees the lurking serpent steps aside, but she, sound sleeping, fearing no such thing, lies at the mercy of his mortal sting. Into the chamber wickedly he stalks, and gazeth on her yet unstained bed. The curtains being close, about he walks, rolling his greedy eyeballs in his head. By their high treason is his heart misled, which gives the watchword to his hand full soon to draw the cloud that hides the silver moon. Look, as the fair and fiery pointed sun, rushing from forth a cloud, bereaves our sight, even so, the curtain drawn, his eyes begun to wink, being blinded with a greater light, whether it is that she reflects so bright, that dazzleth them, or else some shame supposed, but blind they are, and keep themselves enclosed. Oh, had they in that darksome prison died, then had they seen the period of their ill. Then Collatine again by Lucrece' side in his clear bed might have reposed still. But they must ope this blessed league to kill, and wholly thoughted Lucrece to their sight must sell her joy, her life, her world's delight. Her lily hand her rosy cheek lies under, cozening the pillow of a lawful kiss, who, therefore angry, seems to part in sunder, swelling on either side to one his bliss, between whose hills her head entombed is, where, like a virtuous monument, she lies, to be admired of lewd unhallowed eyes. Without the bed her other fair hand was, on the green coverlet, whose perfect white showed like an April daisy on the grass, with pearly sweat, resembling dew of night. Her eyes, like marigolds, had sheathed their light, and canopied in darkness sweetly lay, till they might open to adorn the day. Her hair, like golden threads, played with her breath. O modest wantons! Wanton modesty! Showing life's triumph in the map of death, and death's dim look in life's mortality, each in her sleep themselves so beautify, as if between them twain there were no strife, but that life lived in death, and death in life. Her breasts, like ivory globes circled with blue, a pair of maiden worlds unconquered, save of their lord no bearing yoke they knew, and him by oath they truly honored. These worlds in Tarquin new ambition bred, who, like a foul usurper, went about from this fair throne to heave the owner out. What could he see but mightily he noted? What did he note but strongly he desired? What he beheld, on that he firmly doted, and in his will his wilful eye he teared. With more than admiration he admired her azure veins, her alabaster skin, her coral lips, her snow-white dimpled chin. As the grim lion fawneth o'er his prey, sharp hunger by the conquest satisfied, so o'er this sleeping soul doth Tarquin stay, his rage of lust by grazing qualified, slacked, not suppressed, for standing by her side, his eye, which late this mutiny restrains, unto a greater uproar tempts his veins, and they, like straggling slaves for pillage fighting, obdurate vassals, fell exploits effecting, in bloody death and ravishment delighting, nor children's tears nor mothers' groans respecting, swell in their pride, the onset still expecting, anon his beating heart, alarum striking, gives the hot charge and bids them do their liking. His drumming heart cheers up his burning eye, his eye commends the leading to his hand, as proud of such a dignity, smoking with pride, marched on to make his stand on her bare breast, the heart of all her land, whose ranks of blue veins, as his hand did scale, left their round turrets destitute and pale. They, mustering to the quiet cabinet where their dear governess and lady lies, do tell her she is dreadfully beset, and fright her with confusion of their cries. She, much amazed, breaks ope her locked-up eyes, who, peeping forth this tumult to behold, are by his flaming torch dimmed and controlled. Imagine her as one in dead of night from forth dull sleep by dreadful fancy waking, that thinks she hath beheld some ghastly sprite, whose grim aspect sets every joint a-shaking. What terror 'tis! But she, in worser taking, from sleep disturbed, heedfully doth view the sight which makes supposed terror true. Wrapped and confounded in 1,000 fears, like to a new-killed bird she trembling lies. She dares not look, yet, winking, there appears quick-shifting antics, ugly in her eyes. Such shadows are the weak brain's forgeries, who, angry that the eyes fly from their lights, in darkness daunts them with more dreadful sights. His hand, that yet remains upon her breast, rude ram, to batter such an ivory wall, may feel her heart, poor citizen, distressed, wounding itself to death, rise up and fall, beating her bull. That his hand shakes withal. This moves in him more rage, and lesser pity, to make the breach, and enter this sweet city. First, like a trumpet, doth his tongue begin to sound a parley to his heartless foe, who o'er the white sheet peers her whiter chin, the reason of this rash alarm to know, which he by dumb demeanor seeks to show, but she with vehement prayers urgeth still under what colour he commits this ill. Thus he replies, the colour in thy face, that even for anger makes the lily pale, and the red rose blush at her own disgrace, shall plead for me and tell my loving tale. Under that colour am I come to scale thy never-conquered fort. The fault is thine, for those thine eyes betray thee unto mine. Thus I forestall thee, if thou mean to chide, thy beauty hath ensnared thee to this night, where thou with patience must my will abide, my will that marks thee for my earth's delight, which I to conquer sought with all my might, but as reproof and reason beat it dead, by thy bright beauty was it newly bred. I see what crosses my attempt will bring, I know what thorns the growing rose defends, I think the honey guarded with a sting, all this, beforehand counsel comprehends, but will is deaf, and hears no heedful friends. Only he hath an eye to gaze on beauty, and dotes on what he looks, gainst law or duty. I have debated, even in my soul, what wrong, what shame, what sorrow I shall breed, but nothing can affection's course control, or stop the headlong fury of his speed. I know repentant tears ensue the deed, reproach, disdain, and deadly enmity, yet strike I to embrace mine infamy. This said, he shakes aloft his Roman blade, which, like a falcon towering in the skies, coucheth the fowl below with his wings shade, whose crooked beak threats if he mount he dies. So under his insulting falchion lies harmless Lucretia, marking what he tells with trembling fear, as fowl hear falcon's bells. Lucrece, quoth he, this night I must enjoy thee, if thou deny, then force must work my way, for in thy bed I purpose to destroy thee. That done, some worthless slave of thine I'll slay, to kill thine honour with thy life's decay, and in thy dead arms do I mean to place him, swearing I slew him, seeing thee embrace him. So thy surviving husband shall remain the scornful mark of every open eye. Thy kinsmen hang their heads at this disdain, thy issue blurred with nameless bastardy, and thou, the author of their obloquy, shalt have thy trespass cited up in rhymes, and sung by children in succeeding times. But if thou yield, I rest thy secret friend, the fault unknown is as a thought unacted, a little harm, done to a great good end, for lawful policy remains enacted. The poisonous simple sometimes is compacted in a pure compound, being so applied, his venom in effect is purified. Then, for thy husband and thy children's sake, tender my suit, bequeath not to their lot the shame that from them no device can take, the blemish that will never be forgot, worse than a slavish wipe, or birth hour's blot, for marks descried in men's nativity are nature's faults, not their own infamy. Here with a cockatrice dead-killing eye he rouseth up himself and makes a pause, while she, the picture of pure piety, like a white hind under the great sharp claws, pleads in a wilderness where are no laws, to the rough beast that knows no gentle right, nor aught obeys but his foul appetite. But when a black effaced cloud the world doth threat, in his dim mist the aspiring mountains hiding, from earth's dark womb some gentle gust doth get, which blows these pitchy vapors from their biding, hindering their present fall by this dividing. So his unhallowed haste her words delays, and moody Pluto winks while Orpheus plays. Yet, foul night-working cat, he doth but dally, while in his hold-fast foot the weak mouse panteth. Her sad behavior feeds his vulture folly, a swallowing gulf that even in plenty wanteth. His ear her prayers emits, but his heart granteth no penetrable entrance to her plaining. Tears harden lust, though marble wherewith raining. Her pity-pleading eyes are sadly fixed in the remorseless wrinkles of his face. Her modest eloquence with sighs is mixed, which to her oratory adds more grace. She puts the period often from his place, and midst the sentence so her accent breaks, that twice she doth begin ere once she speaks. She conjures him by high almighty Jove, by knighthood, gentry, and sweet friendship's oath, by her untimely tears, her husband's love, by holy human law, and common troth, by heaven and earth, and all the power of both, that to his borrowed bed he make retire, and stoop to honor, not to foul desire. Quoth she, reward not hospitality with such black payment as thou hast pretended. Mud not the fountain that gave drink to thee, mar not the thing that cannot be amended, and thy ill aim before the shoot be ended. He is no woodman that doth bend his bow to strike a poor unseasonable doe. My husband is thy free. N.D. For his sake spare me, thyself art mighty, for thine own sake leave me, myself a weakling, do not then ensnare me, thou look'st not like deceit, do not deceive me, my sighs, like whirlwinds, labor hence to heave thee. If ever man were emovied with woman's moans, be moved with my tears, my sighs, my groans, all which together, like a troubled ocean, beat at thy rocky and wreck-threatening heart, to soften it with their continual motion, 4 stones dissolved to water do convert. Oh, if no harder than a stone thou art, melt at my tears, and be compassionate. Soft pity enters at an iron gate. In Tarquin's likeness I did entertain thee. Hast thou put on his shape to do him shame? To all the hosts of heaven I complain me, thou wrong'st his honor, wound'st his princely name. Thou art not what thou seem'st, and if the same, thou seem'st not what thou art, a god, a king, for kings like gods should govern everything. How will thy shame be seated in thine age, when thus thy vices bud before thy spring? If in thy hope thou darest do such outrage, what darest thou not when once thou art a king? Oh, be remembered, no outrageous thing from vassal actors can he whipped away, then kings' misdeeds cannot be hid in clay. This deed will make thee only loved for fear, but happy monarchs still are feared for love, with foul offenders thou perforce must bear, when they in thee the like offences prove, if but for fear of this, thou will remove, for princes are the glass, the school, the book, where subjects' eyes do learn, do read, do look. And wilt thou be the school where lust shall learn? Must he in thee read lectures of such shame? Wilt thou be glass, wherein it shall discern authority for sin, warrant for blame, to privilege dishonor in thy name? Thou back'st reproach against long-living laud, and makes fair reputation but a bawd. Hast thou command? By him that gave it thee, from a pure heart command thy rebel will. Draw not thy sword to guard iniquity, for it was lent thee all that brood to kill. Thy princely office how canst thou fulfill, when, patterned by thy fault, foul sin may say he learned to sin, and thou didst teach the way? Think but how vile a spectacle it were to view thy present trespass in another. Men's faults do seldom to themselves appear, their own transgressions partially they smother, this guilt would seem death-worthy in thy brother. Oh, how are they wrapped in with infamies that from their own misdeeds ensconce their eyes? To thee, my heaved-up hands appeal, not to seducing lust, thy rash relier. I sue for exiled majesty's repeal, let him return, and flattering thoughts retire. His true respect will prison false desire, and wipe the dim mist from thy doting eyne, that thou shalt see thy state, and pity mine. Have done, quoth he, my uncontrolled tide turns not, but swells the higher by this let. Small lights are soon blown out, huge fires abide, and with the wind in greater fury fret. The petty streams that pay a daily debt to their salt sovereign, with their fresh falls haste, add to his flow, but alter not his taste. Thou art, quoth she, a sea, a sovereign king, and lo, there falls into thy boundless flood black lust, dishonor, shame, misgoverning, who seek to stain the ocean of thy blood. If all these petty ills shall change thy good, thy sea within a puddle's womb is heresed, and not the puddle in thy sea dispersed. So shall these slaves be king, and thou their slave, thou nobly base, they basely dignified, thou their fair life, and they thy fouler grave, thou loathed in their shame, they in thy pride, the lesser things should not the greater hide. The cedar stoops not to the base shrub's foot, but low shrubs wither at the cedar's root. So let thy thoughts, low vassals to thy state no more, quoth he, by heaven, I will not hear thee, yield to my love, if not, enforced hate, instead of love's coy touch, shall rudely tear thee. That done, despitefully I mean to bear thee unto the base bed of some rascal groom, to be thy partner in this shameful doom. This said, he sets his foot upon the light, for light and lust are deadly enemies, shame folded up in blind concealing night, when most unseen, then most doth tyrannize. The wolf hath seized his prey, the poor lamb cries, till with her own white fleece her voice controlled entombs her outcry in her lips' sweet fold, for with the nightly linen that she wears he pens her piteous clamors in her head, cooling his hot face in the chastest tears that ever modest eyes with sorrow shed. Oh, that prone lust should stain so pure a bed! The spots whereof could weeping purify, her tears should drop on them perpetually. But she hath lost a dearer thing than life, and he hath won what he would lose again. This force league doth force a further strife, this momentary joy breeds months of pain, this hot desire converts to cold disdain. Pure chastity is rifled of her store, and lust, the thief, far poorer than before. Look, as the full fay hound or gorged hawk, unapt for tender smell or speedy flight, makes slow pursuit, or altogether balk the prey wherein by nature they delight. So surfeit-taking Tarquin fares this night, his taste delicious, indigestion souring, devours his will, that lived by foul devouring. O deeper sin than bottomless conceit can comprehend in still imagination. Drunken desire must vomit his receipt, ere he can see his own abomination. While lust is in his pride no exclamation can curb his heat, or rein his rash desire, till, like a jade, self-will himself doth tire. And then with lank and lean discolored cheek, with heavy eye, knit brow, and strengthless pace, feeble desire, all recreant, poor, and meek, like to a bankrupt beggar wails his case. The flesh being proud, desire doth fight with grace, for there it revels, and when that decays, the guilty rebel for remission prays. So fares it with this faultful lord of Rome, who this accomplishment so hotly chased, for now against himself he sounds this doom, that through the length of times he stands discracked. Besides, his soul's fair temple is defact, to whose weak ruins muster troops of cares, to ask the spotted princess how she fares. She says her subjects with foul insurrection have battered down her consecrated wall, and by their mortal fault brought in subjection her immortality, and made her thrall to living death, and pain perpetual, which in her prescience she controlled still, but her foresight could not forestall their will. Even in this thought through the dark night he stealeth, a captive victor that hath lost in gain, bearing away the wound that nothing healeth, the scar that will, despite of cure, remain, leaving his spoil perplexed in greater pain. She hears the load of lust he left behind, and he the burthen of a guilty mind. He like a thievish dog creeps sadly thence, she like a wearied lamb lies panting there. He scowls, and hates himself for his offense. She, desperate, with her nails her flesh doth tear. He faintly flies, sweating with guilty fear. She stays, exclaiming on the direful night. He runs, and chides his vanished, loath delight. He thence departs a heavy convertite. She there remains a hopeless castaway. He in his speed looks for the morning light. She prays she never may behold the day. For day, quoth she, night's scapes doth open lay, and my true eyes have never practised how to cloak offences with a cunning brow. They think not but that every eye can see the same disgrace which they themselves behold, and therefore would they still in darkness be, to have their unseen sin remain untold. For they their guilt with weeping will unfold, and grave, like water that doth eat in steel, upon my cheeks what helpless shame I feel. Here she exclaims against repose and rest, and bids her eyes hereafter still be blind. She wakes her heart by beating on her breast, and bids it leap from thence, where it may find some purer chest, to close so pure a mind. Frantic with grief thus breathes she forth her spite against the unseen secrecy of night. O comfort-killing night, image of hell, dim register and notary of shame, black stage for tragedies and murders fell, vast sin-concealing chaos, nurse of blame, blind muffled bawd, dark harbor for defame, grim cave of death, whispering conspirator with close-tongued treason and the ravisher. O hateful, vaporous, and foggy night, since thou art guilty of my cureless crime, muster thy mists to meet the eastern light, make war against proportioned course of time. Or if thou wilt permit the sun to climb his wonted height, yet ere he go to bed, knit poisonous clouds about his golden head. With rotten damps ravish the morning air, let their exhaled unwholesome breaths make sick the life of purity, the supreme fair, ere he arrive his weary noontide prick, and let thy misty vapors march so thick, that in their smoky ranks his smothered light may set at noon and make perpetual night. Were Tarquin night, as he is but night's child, the silver-shining queen he would disdain. Her twinkling handmaids too, by him defilled, through night's black bosom should not peep again. So should I have co-partners in my pain, and fellowship in woe doth woe assuage, as palmers' chat makes short their pilgrimage. Where now I have no one to blush with me, to cross their arms and hang their heads with mine, to mask their brows, and hide their infamy. But I alone must sit and pine, seasoning the earth with showers of silver brine, mingling my talk with tears, my grief with groans, pro-wasting monuments of lasting moans. O night, thou furnace of foul-reeking smoke, let not the jealous day behold that face which underneath thy black all-hiding cloak immodesty lies martyred with disgrace. Keep still possession of thy gloomy place, that all the faults which in thy reign are made, may likewise be sepulchred in thy shade. Make me not object to the telltale day. The light will show, charactered in my brow, the story of sweet chastity's decay, the impious breach of holy wedlock vow, yea, the illiterate, that know not how to cipher what is writ in learned books, will quote my loathsome trespass in my looks. The nurse, to still her child, will tell my story and fright her crying babe with Tarquin's name. The orator, to deck his oratory, will couple my reproach to Tarquin's shame. Feast-finding minstrels, tuning my defame, will tie the hearers to attend each line. How Tarquin wronged me, I Collatine. Let my good name, that senseless reputation, for Collatine's dear love be kept unspotted. If that be made a theme for disputation, the branches of another root are rotted, and undeserved reproach to him allotted. That is as clear from this adant of mine as I, ere this, was pure to Collatine. O unseen shame! Invisible disgrace! O unfelt sore! Crest wounding, private scar! Reproach is stamped in Collatinus' face, and Tarquin's eye may read the mot afar, how he in peace is wounded, not in war. Alas, how many bear such shameful blows, which not themselves, but he that gives them knows. If, Collatine, thine honor lay in me, from me by strong assault it is bereft. My honey lost, and I, a drone-like bee, have no perfection of my summer left, but robbed and ransacked by injurious theft. In thy weak hive a wandering wasp hath crept, and sucked the honey which thy chase bekept. Yet am I guilty of thy honor's wrack, Yet for thy honor did I entertain him. Coming from thee, I could not put him back, for it had been dishonor to disdain him. Besides, of weariness he did complain him, and talked of virtue, O unlooked for evil, when virtue is profaned in such a devil. Why should the worm intrude the maiden bud? Or hateful cuckoos hatch in sparrows' nests? Or toads infect fair founts with venom mud? Or tyrant folly lurk in gentle breasts? Or kings be breakers of their own behests? But no perfection is so absolute, that some impurity doth not pollute. The aged man that coffers up his gold is plagued with cramps, and gouts, and painful fits, and scarce hath eyes his treasure to behold, but like still pining Tantalus he sits, and useless barns the harvest of his wits, having no other pleasure of his gain but torment that it cannot cure his pain. So then he hath it when he cannot use it, and leaves it to be mastered by his young, who in their pride do presently abuse it. Their father was too weak, and they too strong, to hold their curse-blessed fortune long. The sweets we wish for turn to loathed sours, even in the moment that we call them ours. Unruly blasts wait on the tender spring, unwholesome weeds take root with precious flowers. The adder hisses where the sweet birds sing. What virtue breeds iniquity devours. We have no good that we can say is ours, but ill-annexed opportunity or kills his life or else his quality. O opportunity, thy guilt is great, 'tis thou that executest the traitor's treason, thou set'st the wolf where he the lamb may get, whoever plots the sin, thou points the season, 'tis thou that spurn'st at right, at law, at reason, and in thy shady cell, where none may spy him, sits sin, to seize the souls that wander by him. Thou mak'st the vestal violate her oath, thou blow'st the fire when temperance is thawed, thou smother'st honesty, thou murther'st troth, thou foul abettor, thou notorious bawd, thou plantest scandal and displacest laud, thou ravisher, thou traitor, thou false thief, thy honey turns to gall, thy joy to grief. Thy secret pleasure turns to open shame, thy private feasting to a public fast, thy smoothing titles to a ragged name, thy sugared tongue to bitter wormwood taste, thy violent vanities can never last. How comes it then, vile opportunity, being so bad, such numbers seek for thee? When wilt thou be the humble suppliant's friend, and bring him where his suit may be obtained? When wilt thou sort an hour great strifes to end? Or free that soul which wretchedness hath chained? Give physic to the sick, ease to the pained? The poor, lame, blind, halt, creep, cry out for thee, but they ne'er meet with opportunity. The patient dies while the physician sleeps, the orphan pines while the oppressor feeds, justice is feasting while the widow weeps, advice is sporting while infection breeds. Thou grant'st no time for charitable deeds, wrath, envy, treason, rape, and murder's rages, thy heinous hours wait on them as their pages. When truth and virtue have to do with thee, 1,000 crosses keep them from thy aid, they buy thy help, but sin ne'er gives a fee, he gratis comes, and thou art well apped as well to hear as grant what he hath said. My Collatine would else have come to me when Tarquin did, but he was stayed by thee. Guilty thou art of murder and of theft, guilty of perjury and subornation, guilty of treason, forgery, and shift, guilty of incest, that abomination, an accessory by thine inclination to all sins past, and all that are to come, from the creation to the general doom. Ms. S.H. Appentime, copse made of ugly night, swift subtle post, carrier of grisly care, eater of youth, false slave to false delight, base watch of woes, sin's pack-horse, virtue's snare. Thou nursest all and murderest all that are, O hear me then, injurious, shifting time. Be guilty of my death, since of my crime. Why hath thy servant, Opportunity, betrayed the hours thou gav'st me to repose, cancelled my fortunes, and enchained me to endless state of never-ending woes? Time's office is to find the hate of foes, to eat up errors by opinion bred, not spend the dowry of a lawful bed. Time's glory is to calm contending kings, to unmask falsehood, and bring truth to light, to stamp the seal of time in aged things, to wake the morn, and sentinel the night, to wrong the wronger till he render right, to ruinate proud buildings with thy hours, and smear with dust their glittering golden towers, to fill with wormholes stately monuments, to feed oblivion with decay of things, to blot old books and alter their contents, to pluck the quills from ancient ravens' wings, to dry the old oak's sap and cherish springs, to spoil antiquities of hammered steel, and turn the giddy round of fortune's wheel, to show the beldame daughters of her daughter, to make the child a man, the man a child, to slay the tiger that doth live by slaughter, to tame the unicorn and lion wild, to mock the subtle, and themselves be gild, to cheer the ploughman with increaseful crops, and waste huge stones with little water drops. Why work'st thou mischief in thy pilgrimage, unless thou couldst return to make amends? One poor retiring minute in an age would purchase thee 1,000,000 friends, lending him what that to bad debtors lends. Oh, this dread night, wouldst thou 1 hour come back, I could prevent this storm, and shun thy wrack. Thou cease, as lackey to eternity, with some mischance cross Tarquin in his flight, devise extremes beyond extremity, to make him curse this cursed crimeful night. Let ghastly shadows his lewd eyes affright, and the dire thought of his committed evil shape every bush a hideous shapeless devil. Disturb his hours of rest with restless trances, afflict him in his bed with bedrid groans, let there bechance him pitiful mischances, to make him moan. But pity not his moans, stone him with hardened hearts, harder than stones, and let mild women to him lose their mildness, wilder to him than tigers in their wildness. Let him have time to tear his curled hair, let him have time against himself to rave, let him have time of time's help to despair, let him have time to live a loathed slave, let him have time a beggar's orts to crave, and time to see one that by alms doth lie disdain to him disdained scraps to give. Let him have time to see his friends his foes, and merry fools to mock at him resort. Let him have time to mark how slow time goes in time of sorrow, and how swift and short his time of folly and his time of sport, and ever let his unrecalling crime have time to wail the abusing of his time. O time, thou tutor both to good and bad, teach me to curse him that thou taught'st this ill. At his own shadow let the thief run mad, himself seek every hour to kill. Such wretched hands such wretched blood should spill, for who so base would such an office have as slanderous death's man to so base a slave? The baser is he, coming from a king, to shame his hope with deeds degenerate. The mightier man, the mightier is the thing that makes him honored, or begets him hate, for greatest scandal waits on greatest state. The moon being clouded presently is mist, but little stars may hide them when they list. The crow may bathe his coal-black wings in mire, and unperceived fly with the filth away, but if the like the snow-white swan desire, the stain upon his silver down will stay. Poor grooms are sightless night, kings glorious day, gnats are unodoured wheresoe'er they fly, but eagles gazed upon with every eye. Out idle words, servants to shallow fools, and profitable sounds, weak arbitrators. Busy yourselves in skill-contending schools, debate where leisure serves with dull debaters. To trembling clients be you mediators. For me, I force not argument a straw, since that my case is past the help of law. In vain I rail at opportunity, at time, at Tarquin, an uncheerful night. In vain I cavil with mine infamy, in vain I spurn at my confirmed despite. This helpless smoke of words doth me no right. The remedy indeed to do me good is to let forth my foul-defilled blood. Poor hand, why quiverst thou at this decree? Honor thyself to rid me of this shame, for if I die, my honor lives in thee, but if I live, thou livest in my defame, since thou couldst not defend thy loyal dame, and wast afeard to scratch her wicked foe, kill both thyself and her for yielding so. This said, from her betumbled couch she starteth, to find some desperate instrument of death, but this no slaughterhouse no tool imparteth, to make more vent fo. Our passage of her breath, which, thronging through her lips, so vanisheth as smoke from Etna, that in air consumes, or that which from discharged cannon fumes. In vain, quoth she, I live, and seek in vain some happy mean to end a hapless life. I feared by Tarquin's falchion to be slain, yet for the self-same purpose seek a knife. But when I feared I was a loyal wife, so am I now. Oh no, that cannot be. Of that true type hath Tarquin rifled me. Oh, that is gone for which I sought to live, and therefore now I need not fear to die. To clear this spot by death, at least I give a badge of fame to slander's livery, a dying life to living infamy. Poor helpless help, the treasure stolen away, to burn the guiltless casket where it lay. Well, well, dear Collatine, thou shalt not know the stained taste of violated troth. I will not wrong thy true affection so, to flatter thee with an infringed oath. This bastard graft shall never come to growth. He shall not boast who did thy stock pollute that thou art doting father of his fruit. Nor shall he smile at thee in secret thought, nor laugh with his companions at thy state. But thou shalt know thy interest was not bought basely with gold, but stolen from forth thy gate. For me, I am the mistress of my fate, and with my trespass never will dispense, till life to death acquit my forced offence. I will not poison thee with my adint, nor fold my fault in cleanly coined excuses. My sable ground of sin I will not paint, to hide the truth of this false knight's abuses. My tongue shall utter all, mine eyes, like sluices, as from a mountain spring that feeds a dale, shall gush pure streams to purge my impure tale. By this, lamenting Philomel had ended the well-toned warble of her nightly sorrow, and solemn night with slow sad gait descended to ugly hell, when, lo, the blushing morrow lends light to all fair eyes that light will borrow. But cloudy Lucrece shames herself to see, and therefore still in night would cloistered be. Revealing day through every cranny spies, and seems to point her out where she sits weeping, to whom she sobbing speaks, O eye of eyes, why pryest thou through my window? Leave thy peeping, mock with thy tickling beams eyes that are sleeping, brand not my forehead with thy piercing light, for day hath not to do what's done by night. Thus cavils she with everything she sees. True grief is fond and testy as a child, who wayward once, his mood with naught agrees. Old woes, not infant sorrows, bear them mild. Continuance tames the one, the other wild, like an unpracticed swimmer plunging still with too much labor drowns for want of skill. So she, deep drenched in a sea of care, holds disputation with each thing she views, and to herself all sorrow doth compare. No object but her passion's strength renews, and as one shifts, another straight ensues. Sometime her grief is dumb and hath no words, sometime 'tis mad, and too much talk affords. The little birds that tune their morning's joy make her moans mad with their sweet melody. For mirth doth search the bottom of annoy, sad souls are slain in merry company, grief best is pleased with grief's society. True sorrow then is feelingly suffoced when with like semblance it is sympathized. 'Tis double death to drown in ken of shore, he 10 times pines that pines beholding food, to see the salve doth make the wound ache more. Great grief grieves most that would do it good. Deep woes roll forward like a gentle flood, who, being stopped, the bounding banks o'erflows. Grief dallied with nor law nor limit knows. You mocking birds, quoth she, your tunes entomb within your hollow swelling feathered breasts, and in my hearing be you mute and dumb. My restless discord loves no stops nor rests, a woeful hostess brooks not merry guests. Relish your nimble notes to pleasing ears, distress like stumps when time is kept with tears. Come, Philomel, that sing'st of ravishment, make thy sad grove in my dishevelled hair, as the dank earth weeps at thy languishment, so I at each sad strain will strain a tear, and with deep groans the diapason bear, for burthen-wise I'll hum on Tarquin still, while thou on Tyrus descant'st better skill. And whiles against the thorn thou bear'st thy part, to keep thy sharp woes waking, wretched I, to imitate thee well, against my heart will fix a sharp knife, to affright mine eye, who, if it wink, shall thereon fall and die. These means, as frets upon an instrument, shall tune our heartstrings to true languishment. And for, poor bird, thou sing'st not in the day, as shaming any I should thee behold, some dark deep desert, seated from the way, that knows not parching heat nor freezing cold, will we find out, and there we will unfold to creatures stern sad tunes, to change their kinds, since men prove beasts, let beasts bear gentle minds. As the poor fright deer, that stands at gaze, wildly determining which way to fly, or one encompassed with a winding maze, that cannot tread the I out readily, so with herself is she in mutiny, to live or die which of the twain were better, when life is shammed, and death reproaches debtor. To kill myself, quoth she, alack! What were it, but with my body my poor soul's pollution? They that lose half with greater patience bear it than they whose whole is swallowed in confusion. That mother tries a merciless conclusion who, having two sweet babes, when death takes one, will slay the other, and be nurse to none. My body or my soul, which was the dearer, when the one pure, the other made divine? Whose love of either to myself was nearer? When both were kept for heaven and Collatine. Ah me! The bark peeled from the lofty pine, his leaves will wither, and his sap decay, so must my soul, her bark being peeled away. Her house is sacked, her quiet interrupted, her mansion battered by the enemy, her sacred temple spotted, spoiled, corrupted, grossly engirt with daring infamy. Then let it not be called impiety, if in this blemished fort I make some hole through which I may convey this troubled soul. Yet die I will not till my Collatine have heard the cause of my untimely death, that he may vow, in that sad hour of mine, revenge on him that made me stop my breath. My stained blood to Tarquin I'll bequeath, which by him tainted shall for him be spent, and as his due writ in my testament. My honor I'll bequeath unto the knife that wounds my body so dishonored. 'Tis honor to deprive dishonored life, the one will live, the other being dead, so of shame's ashes shall my fame be bred, for in my death I mur the shameful scorn, my shame so dead, mine honor is new born. Dear Lord, of that dear jewel I have lost, what legacy shall I bequeath to thee? My resolution, love, shall be thy boast, by whose example thou revenged mayst be. How Tarquin must be used, read it in me. Myself, thy friend, will kill myself, thy foe, and for my sake, serve thou false Tarquin so. This brief abridgment of my will I make, my soul and body to the skies and ground. My resolution, husband, do thou take, mine honor be the knife's that makes my wound, my shame be his that did my fame confound, and all my fame that lives disperse be to those that live, and think no shame of me. Thou, Collatine, shalt oversee this will. How was I overseen that thou shalt see it? My blood shall wash the slander of mine ill, my life's foul deed my life's fair end shall free it. Faint not, faint heart, but stoutly say, so be it. Yield to my hand shall conquer thee, thou dead, both die, and both shall victors be. This plot of death when sadly she had laid, and whipped the brinish pearl from her bright eyes, with untoned tongue she hoarsely called her maid, whose swift obedience to her mistress hies, for fleet-winged duty with thought's feathers flies. Poor Lucrece cheeks unto her maid seemed so as winter meads when sun doth melt their snow. Her mistress she doth give demure good morrow, with soft slow tongue, true mark of modesty, and sorts a sad look to her lady's sorrow, for why her face wore sorrow's livery, but durst not ask of her audaciously why her two sons were cloud eclipsed so, nor why her fair cheeks overwashed with woe. But as the earth doth weep, the sun being set, each flower moisten like a melting eye, even so the maid with swelling drops gone wet her circled eyne, inforked by sympathy of those fair suns, set in her mistress' sky, who in a salt-waved ocean quench their light, which makes the maid weep like the dewy night. A pretty while these pretty creatures stand, like ivory conduits coral cisterns filling, one justly weeps, the other takes in hand no cause, but company, of her drops spilling, their gentle sex to weep are often willing, grieving themselves to guess at other smarts, and then they drown their eyes or break their hearts. For men have marble, women waxen minds, and therefore are they formed as marble will. The weak oppressed, the impression of strange kinds is formed in them by force, by fraud, or skill, then call them not the authors of their ill, no more than wax shall be accounted evil, wherein is stamped the semblance of a devil. Their smoothness, like a goodly champagne plain, lays open all the little worms that creep. In men, as in a rough-grown grove, remain cave-keeping evils that obscurely sleep. Through crystal walls each little mote will peep. Though men can cover crimes with bold stern looks, poor women's faces are their own false books. No man inveighed against the withered flower, but chide rough winter that the flower hath killed. Not that devoured, but that which doth devour, is worthy blame. Oh, let it not be held poor women's faults, that they are so fulfilled with men's abuses. Those proud lords, to blame, make weak-made women tenants to their shame. The precedent whereof in Lucrece' view, assailed by night with circumstances strong of present death, and shame that might ensue by that her death, to do her husband wrong, such danger to res. Instance did belong. The dying fear through all her body spread, and who cannot abuse a body dead? By this, mild patience bid fair Lucrece speak to the poor counterfeit of her complaining. My girl, quoth she, on what occasion break those tears from thee, that down thy cheeks are raining? If thou dost weep for grief of my sustaining, no, gentle wench, it small avails my mood. If tears could help, mine own would do me good. But tell me, girl, when went, and there she stayed till after a deep groan, Tarquin from hence? Madam, ere I was up, replied the maid, the more to blame my sluggard negligence, yet with the fault I thus far can dispense. Myself was stirring ere the break of day, and ere I rose, was Tarquin gone away. But, lady, if your maid may be so bold, she would request to know your heaviness. O peace, quoth Lucrece, if it should be told, the repetition cannot make it less, for more it is than I can well express, and that deep torture may be called a hell, when more is felt than one hath power to tell. Go, get me hither paper, ink, and pen, yet save that labor, for I have them here. What should I say? One of my husband's men bid thou be ready, by and by, to bear a letter to my lord, my love, my dear. Bid him with speed prepare to carry it. The cause craves haste, and it will soon be writ. Her maid is gone, and she prepares to write, first hovering o'er the paper with her quill. Conceit and grief in eager combat fight. What wit sets down is blotted straight with will. This is too curious good, this blunt and ill. Much like a press of people at a door, throng her inventions, which shall go before. At last she thus begins. Thou worthy lord of that unworthy wife that greeteth thee, health to thy person. Next vouchsafe to afford, if ever, love, thy Lucrece thou wilt see, some present speed to come and visit me. So, I commend me from our house in grief. My woes are tedious, though my words are brief. Here folds she up the tenor of her woe, her certain sorrow writ uncertainly. By this short schedule Collatine may know her grief, but not her grief's true quality. She dares not thereof make discovery, lest he should hold it her own gross abuse, ere she with blood had stained her stained excuse. Besides, the life and feeling of her passion she hoards, to spend when he is by to hear her, when sighs and groans and tears may grace the fashion of her disgrace, the better so to clear her from that suspicion which the world might bear her. To shun this blot, she would not blot the letter with words, till action might become them better. To see sad sights moves more than hear them told, for then the eye interprets to the ear the heavy motion that it doth behold, when every part a part of woe doth bear. 'Tis but a part of sorrow that we hear. Deep sounds make lesser noise than shallow fords, and sorrow ebbs, being blown with wind of words. Her letter now is sealed, and on it writ at Ardea to my lord with more than haste. The post attends, and she delivers it, charging the sour-faced groom to hie as fast as lagging fowls before the northern blast. Speed more than speed, but dull and slow she deems, extremely still urgeth such extremes. The homely villain courtesies to her low, and blushing on her, with a steadfast eye receives the scroll, without or yea or no, and forth with bashful innocence doth hie. But they whose guilt within their bosoms lie imagine every eye beholds their blame, for Lucrece thought he blushed to see her shame, when, silly groom! God, what, it was defect of spirit, life, and bold audacity. Such harmless creatures have a true respect to talk and deeds, while others saucily promise more speed, but do it leisurely. Even so this pattern of the worn-out age pawned honest looks, but laid no words to gauge. His kindled duty kindled her mistrust, that two red fires in both their faces blazed. She thought he blushed, as knowing Tarquin's lust, and blushing with him, wistly on him gazed. Her earnest eye did make him more amazed. The more saw the blood his cheeks replenish, the more she thought he spied in her some blemish. But long she thinks till he return again, and yet the duteous vassal scarce is gone. The weary time she cannot entertain, for now 'tis stale to sigh, to weep, to groan. So woe hath wearied woe, moan tired moan, that she her plaints a little while doth stay, pausing for means to mourn some newer way. At last she calls to mind where hangs a piece of skilful painting, made for Priam's Troy, before the which is drawn the power of Greece, for Helen's rape the city to destroy, threatening cloud-kissing Ilion with annoy, which the conceited painter drew so proud, as heaven, it seemed, to kiss the turrets bowed. 1,000 lamentable objects there, in scorn of nature, art gave lifeless life. Many a dry drop seemed a weeping tear, shed for the slaughtered husband by the wife. The red blood reeked, to show the painter's strife. The dying eyes gleamed forth their ashy lights, like dying coals burned out in tedious nights. There might you see the laboring pioneer begrimed with sweat, and smeared all with dust, and from the towers of Troy there would appear the very eyes of men through loopholes thrust, gazing upon the Greeks with little lust. Such sweet observance in this work was had, that one might see those far-off eyes look sad. In great commanders' grace and majesty you might behold, triumphing in their faces, in youth, quick bearing and dexterity, and here and there the painter interlaces pale cowards, marching on with trembling paces, which heartless peasants did so well resemble, that one would swear he saw them quake and tremble. In Ajax and Ulysses, oh, what art of physiognomy might one behold! The face of either ciphered either's heart, their face their manners most expressly told. In Ajax' eyes blunt rage and rigor rolled, but the mild glance that sly Ulysses lent showed deep regard and smiling government. There pleading might you see grave Nestor stand, as were encouraging the Greeks to fight, making such sober action with his hand that it beguiled attention, charmed the sight. In speech, it seemed, his beard, all silver white, wagged up and down, and from his lips did fly thin winding breath, which curled up to the sky. About him were a press of gaping faces, which seemed to swallow up his sound advice, all jointly listening, but with several graces, as if some mermaid did their ears entice. Some high, some low, the painter was so nice. The scalps of many, almost hid behind, to jump up higher seemed to mock the mind. Here one man's hand leaned on another's head, his nose being shadowed by his neighbor's ear. Here one being thronged bears back, all bolen and red, another smothered seems to pelt and swear, and in their rage such signs of rage they bear, as, but for loss of Nestor's golden words, it seemed they would debate with angry swords. For much imaginary work was there, conceit deceitful, so compact, so kind, that for Achilles' image stood his spear, gripped in an armed hand. Himself, behind, was left unseen, save to the eye of mind. A hand, a foot, a face, a leg, a head, stood for the whole to be imagined, and from the walls of strong besieged Troy when their brave hope, bold Hector, marched to field, stood many Trojan mothers, sharing joy to see their youthful sons bright weapons wield, and to their hope they such odd action yield, that through their light joy seemed to appear, like bright things stained, a kind of heavy fear, and from the strand of Dardan, where they fought, to Simois' reedy banks, the red blood ran, whose waves to imitate the battle sought with swelling ridges, and their ranks began to break upon the galled shore, and then retire again, till, meeting greater ranks, they join, and shoot their foam at Simois' banks. To this well-painted piece is Lucrece come, to find a face where all distress is stilled. Many she sees where cares have carved some, but none where all distress and dolour dwelled, till she despairing Hecuba beheld, staring on Priam's wounds with her old eyes, which bleeding under Pyrrhus' proud foot lies. In her the painter had anatomised time's ruin, beauty's rack, and grim care's reign. Her cheeks with chops and wrinkles were disquist. Of what she was no semblance did remain. Her blue blood, charmed to black in every vein, wanting the spring that those shrunk pipes had fed, showed life imprisoned in a body dead. On this sad shadow Lucrece spends her eyes, and shapes her sorrow to the beldame's woes, who nothing wants to answer her but cries, and bitter words to ban her cruel foes. The painter was no god to lend her those, and therefore Lucrece swears he did her wrong, to give her so much grief, and not a tongue. Per instrument, quoth she, without a sound, I'll tune thy woes with my lamenting tongue, and drop sweet balm in Priam's painted wound, and rail on Pyrrhus that hath done him wrong, and with my tears quench Troy that burns so long, and with my knife scratch out the angry eyes of all the Greeks that are thine enemies. Show me the strumpet that began this stir, that with my nails her beauty I may tear. Thy heat of lust, fond Paris, did incur this load of wrath that burning Troy doth bear. Thy kindled the fire that burneth here, and here in Troy, for trespass of thine eye, the sire, the son, the dame, and daughter die. Why should the private pleasure of someone become the public plague of many mo? Let sin, alone committed, light alone upon his head that hath transgressed so. Let guiltless souls be freed from guilty woe. For one's offense why should so many fall, to plague a private sin in general? Lo, here weeps Hecuba, here Priam dies, here manly Hector faints, here Troilus swoons, here friend by friend in bloody channel lies, and friend to friend gives unadvised wounds, and one man's lust these many lives confounds. Had doting Priam checked his son's desire, Troy had been bright with fame and not with fire. Here feelingly she weeps Troy's painted woes, for sorrow, like a heavy hanging bell, once set on ringing, with his own weight goes. Then little strength rings up the doleful knell. So Lucrece at awork sad tales doth tell to penciled pensiveness and coloured sorrow. She lends them words, and she their looks doth borrow. She throws her eyes about the painting round, and whom she finds forlorn she doth lament. At last she sees a wretched image bound, that piteous looks to Phrygian shepherds lent. His face, though full of cares, yet showed content. Onward to Troy with the blunt swains he goes, so mild, that patience seemed to scorn his woes. In him the painter labored with his skill to hide deceit, and give the harmless show an humble gait, calm looks, eyes wailing still, a brow unbent, that seemed to welcome woe, cheeks neither red nor pale, but mingled so that blushing red no guilty instance gave, nor ashy pale the fear that false hearts have. But like a constant and confirmed devil, he entertained a show so seeming just, and therein so ensconced his secret evil, that jealousy itself cold not mistrust false creeping craft, and perjury should thrust into so bright a day such black effaced storms, or blot with hellborn sin such saint-like forms. The well-skilled workman this mild image drew for perjured Sinon, whose enchanting story the credulous old Priam after slew, whose words, like wildfire, burnt the shining glory of rich-built Ilion, that the skies were sorry, and little stars shot from their fixed places, when their glass fell wherein they viewed their faces. This picture she advisedly perused, and chid the painter for his wondrous skill, saying, some shape in Sinon's was abused, so fair a form lodged not a mind so ill, and still on him she gazed, and gazing still, such signs of truth in his plain face she spied, that she concludes the picture was belied. It cannot be, quoth she, that so much guile, she would have said, can lurk in such a look, but Tarquin's shape came in her mind the while, and from her tongue can lurk from cannot took, it cannot be she in that sense forsook, and turned it thus, it cannot be, I find, but such a face should bear a wicked mind, for even as so Sinon here is painted, so sober sad, so weary, and so mild, as if with grief or travail he had fainted. To me came Tarquin armed, so beguiled with outward honesty, but yet defilled with inward vice. As Priam him did cherish, so did I Tarquin, so my Troy did perish. Look, look, how listening Priam wets his eyes, to see those borrowed tears that Sinon sheds. Priam, why art thou old and yet not wise? For every tear he falls a Trojan bleeds, his eye drops fire, no water thence proceeds. Those round clear pearls of his that move thy pity are balls of quenchless fire to burn thy city. Such devils steal effects from lightless hell, for Sinon in his fire doth quake with cold, and in that cold hot burning fire doth dwell. These contraries such unity do hold, only to flatter fools, and make them bold. So Priam's trust false Sinon's tears doth flatter, that he finds means to burn his Troy with water. Here, all enragged, such passion her assails, that patience is quite beaten from her breast. She tears the senseless Sinon with her nails, comparing him to that unhappy guest whose deed hath made herself detest. At last she smilingly with this gives o'er. Fool, fool, quoth she, his wounds will not be sore. Thus ebbs and flows the current of her sorrow, and time doth weary time with her complaining. She looks for night, and then she longs for morrow, and both she thinks too long with her remaining. Short time seems long in sorrow's sharp sustaining. Though woe be heavy, yet it seldom sleeps, and they that watch see time how slow it creeps. Which all this time hath overslept her thought, that she with painted images hath spent, being from the feeling of her own grief brought by deep surmise of others' detriment, losing her woes in shows of discontent. It eases some, though none it ever curd, to think their dolour others have endured. But now the mindful messenger come back, brings home his lord and other company, who finds his Lucrece clad in mourning black, and round about her tear-stained eye blue circles streamed, like rainbows in the sky. These water-galls in her dim element foretell new storms to those already spent, which when her sad beholding husband saw, amazedly in her sad face he stares. Her eyes, though sod in tears, looked red and raw, her lively colour killed with deadly cares. He hath no power to ask her how she fares, both stood, like old acquaintance in a trance, met far from home, wondering each other's chance. At last he takes her by the bloodless hand, and thus begins, What uncouth ill event hath thee befallen, that thou dost trembling stand? Sweet love, what spite hath thy fair colour spent? Why art thou thus atterred in discontent? Unmask, dear, dear, this moody heaviness, and tell thy grief, that we may give redress. 3 times with sighs she gives her sorrow fire, ere once she can discharge one word of woe. At length addressed to answer his desire, she modestly prepares to let them know her honour is ta'en prisoner by the foe, while Collatine and his consorted lords with sad attention long to hear her words. And now this pale swan in her watery nest begins the sad dirge of her certain ending. Few words, quoth she, shall fit the trespass best, where no excuse can give the fault amending. In me more woes than words are now depending, and my laments would be drawn out too long, to tell them all with one poor tired tongue. Then be this all the task it hath to say, dear husband, in the interest of thy bed a stranger came, and on that pillow lay where thou wast wont to rest thy weary head, and what wrong else may be imagined by foul enforcement might be done to me, from that, alas! Thy Lucrece is not free. For in the dreadful dead of dark midnight, with shining falchion in my chamber came a creeping creature, with a flaming light, and softly cried, Awake, thou Roman dame, and entertain my love, else lasting shame on thee and thine this night I will inflict, if thou my love's desire do contradict. For some hard-favoured groom of thine, quoth he, unless thou yoke thy liking to my will, I'll murder straight, and then I'll slaughter thee and swear I found you where you did fulfill the loathsome act of lust, and so did kill the lechers in their deed. This act will be my fame and thy perpetual infamy. With this, I did begin to start and cry, and then against my heart he sets his sword, swearing, unless I took all patiently, I should not live to speak another word, so should my shame still rest upon record, and never be forgotten mighty Rome the adulterate death of Lucrece and her groom. Mine enemy was strong, my poor self weak, and far the weaker was so strong that fear, my bloody judge forbade my tongue to speak, no rightful plea might plead for justice there. His scarlet lust came evidence to swear that my poor beauty had purloined his eyes, and when the judge is robbed the prisoner dies. Oh, teach me how to make mine own excuse. Or at the least this refuge let me find, though my gross blood be stained with this abuse. Immaculate and spotless is my mind, that was not forked, that never was inclined to accessory yieldings, but still pure doth in her poisoned closet yet endure. Lo, here, the hopeless merchant of this loss, with head declined, and voice dammed up with woe, with sad set eyes, and wretched arms across, from lips new waxen pale begins to blow the grief away that stops his answer so. But wretched as he is he strives in vain, what he breathes out his breath drinks up again. As through an arch the violent roaring tide outruns the eye that doth behold his haste, yet in the eddy boundeth in his pride back to the strait that forked him on so fast. In rage sent out, recalled in rage, being past, even so his sighs, his sorrows make a saw, to push grief on, and back the same grief draw. Which speechless woe of his purse she attendeth, and his untimely frenzy thus awaketh. Dear Lord, thy sorrow to my sorrow lendeth another power, no flood by raining slaketh. My woe too sensible thy passion mocketh more feeling painful, let it then suffice to drown one woe, one pair of weeping eyes. And for my sake, when I might charm thee so, for she that was thy Lucrece, now attend me, be suddenly revenged on my foe, thine, mine, his own. Suppose thou dost defend me from what is past, the help that thou shalt lend me comes all too late, yet let the traitor die, for sparing justice feeds iniquity. But ere I name him, you fair lords, quoth she, speaking to those that came with Collatine, shall plight your honorable faiths to me, with swift pursuit to venge this wrong of mine, for 'tis a meritorious fair design to chase injustice with revengeful arms. Knights, by their oaths, should right poor ladies' harms. At this request, with noble disposition each present lord began to promise aid, as bound in knighthood to her imposition, longing to hear the hateful foe bewrayed. But she, that yet her sad task hath not said, the protestation stops. Oh, speak, quoth she, how may this forced stain be whipped from me? What is the quality of mine offence, being constrained with dreadful circumstance? May my pure mind with the foul act dispense, my low declined honor to advance? May any terms acquit me from this chance? The poisoned fountain clears itself again, and why not I from this compelled stain? With this, they all at once began to say, her body stain her mind untainted clears, while with a joyless smile she turns away the face, that map which deep impression bears of hard misfortune, carved in it with tears. No, no, quoth she, no dame, hereafter living, by my excuse shall claim excuses giving. Here with a sigh, as if her heart would break, she throws forth Tarquin's name. He, she says. But more than he her poor tongue could not speak, till after many accents and delays, untimely breathings, sick and short essays, she utters this, he, fair lords, 'tis he, that guides this hand to give this wound to me. Even here she sheathed in her harmless breast the harmful knife, that thence her soul unsheathed, that blow did bail it from the deep unrest of that polluted prison where it breathed. Her contrite sighs unto the clouds bequeathed her winged sprite, and through her wounds doth fly life's lasting date from cancelled destiny. Stone still, astonished with this deadly deed, stood Collatine and all his lordly crew, till Lucrece father that beholds her bleed, himself on her self-slaughtered body threw, and from the purple fountain Brutus drew the murderous knife, and, as it left the place, her blood, in poor revenge, held it in chase, and bubbling from her breast, it doth divide in two slow rivers, that the crimson blood circles her body in on every side, who, like a late sacked island, vastly stood bare and unpeopled. In this fearful flood, some of her blood still pure and red remained, and some looked black, and that false Tarquin stained. About the mourning and congealed face of that black blood a watery wriggle goes, which seems to weep upon the tainted place, and ever since, as pitying Lucrece woes, corrupted blood some watery token shows, and blood untainted still doth red abide, blushing at that which is so putrefied. Daughter, dear daughter, old Lucretius cries, that life was mine which thou hast here deprived. If in the child the father's image lies, where shall I live now Lucrece is unlived? Thou wast not to this end from me derived. If children predecease progenitors, we are their offspring, and they none of ours. Per broken glass, I often did behold in thy sweet semblance my old age new born. But now that fair fresh mirror, dim and old, shows me a bare bond death by time outworn. Oh, from thy cheeks my image thou hast torn, and shivered all the beauty of my glass, that I no more can see what once I was. O time, cease thou thy course and last no longer, if they surcease to be that should survive. Shall rotten death make conquest of the stronger, and leave the faltering feeble souls alive? The old bees die, the young possess their hive, then live, sweet Lucrece, live again, and see thy father die, and not thy father thee. By this starts Collatine as from a dream, and bids Lucretius give his sorrow place. And then in cold Lucrece' bleeding stream he falls, and bathes the pale fear in his face, and counterfeits to die with her a space, till manly shame bids him possess his breath, and live, to be revenged on her death. The deep vexation of his inward soul has served a dumb arrest upon his tongue, who, mad that sorrow should his use control, or keep him from heart-easing words so long, begins to talk, but through his lips do throng weak words, so thick come in his poor heart's aid, that no man could distinguish what he said. Yet sometime Tarquin was pronounced plain, but through his teeth, as if the name he tore. This windy tempest, till it blow up rain, held back his sorrow's tide, to make it more. At last it rains, and busy winds give o'er, then son and father weep with equal strife, who should weep most, for daughter or for wife? The one doth call her his, the other his, yet neither may possess the claim they lay. The father says she's mine, oh, mine she is, replies her husband, do not take away my sorrow's interest. Let no mourner say he weeps for she was only mine, and only must be wailed by Collatine. Oh, quoth Lucretius, I did give that life which she too early and too late hath spilled. Woe, woe, quoth Collatine, she was my wife, I owed her, and 'tis mine that she hath killed. My daughter and my wife with clamours filled the dispersed air, who, holding Lucrece's life, answered their cries, my daughter, and my wife. Brutus, who plucked the knife from Lucrece's side, seeing such emulation in their woe, began to clothe his wit in state and pride, burying in Lucrece wound his follies show. He with the Romans was esteemed so as silly jeering idiots are with kings, for sportive words, and uttering foolish things, but now he throws that shallow habit by, wherein deep policy did him disguise, and armed his long-hid wits advisedly, to check the tears in Collatinus' eyes. Thou wronged lord of Rome, quoth he, arise. Let my unsound self, suppositoried a fool, now set thy long-experienced wit to school. Why, Collatine, is woe the cure for woe? Do wounds help wounds, or grief help grievous deeds? Is it revenge to give thyself a blow, for his foul act by whom thy fair wife bleeds? Such childish humour from weak minds proceeds. Thy wretched wife mistook the matter so, to slay herself, that should have slain her foe. Courageous Roman, do not steep thy heart in such relenting dew of lamentations, but kneel with me, and help to bear thy part, to rouse our Roman gods with invocations, that they will suffer these abominations, since Rome herself in them doth stand discracked, by our strong arms from forth her fair streets chased. Now, by the Capitol that we adore, and by this chaste blood so unjustly stained, by heaven's fair sun that breathes the fat earth's store, by all our country rights in Rome maintained, and by chaste Lucrece's soul that late complained her wrongs to us, and by this bloody knife, we will revenge the death of this true wife. This said, he struck his hand upon his breast, and kissed the fatal knife, to end his vow, and to his protestation argued the rest, who, wondering at him, did his words allow, then jointly to the ground their knees they bow, and that deep vow, which Brutus made before, he doth again repeat, and that they swore. When they had sworn to this advised doom, they did conclude to bear dead Lucrece thence, to show her bleeding body thorough Rome, and so to publish Tarquin's foul offence, which being done with speedy diligence, The Romans plausibly did give consent to Tarquin's everlasting banishment.